Did you do it, Nate, or you want me?
I did. Just going live to a lot of places. All right, we're here with the crew, and we're about to watch to see if Alec Baldwin goes down for manslaughter. Let everybody, who's on the panel? Come on, let's start. Was it left to right or up to down? Andrea, tell them who you are and where you're from and what you're doing here.
Hey, everybody. So I am Andrea Burkhart. You can find me on YouTube, Twitter, and Substack. I'm A. Burkhart Law, and I'm a licensed attorney in Washington State. Been doing criminal defense for just shy of 2 decades. So looking forward to this one.
My name is Nate, the lawyer, and you guys know who I am. I'm a guy who just comes online and talks crap about the law. Hopefully you'll enjoy it because I'm animated and I like this craziness. So that's all it is. Go ahead, Eric. Tell them who you are.
This is Eric Hunley, the goofball behind Layback Law, hanging out with all these more talented people with this crazy experiment that I think will work out extremely well in the end, but it's going to be a little bit of jiggering. Coming at you from Richmond, Virginia on my anniversary on the road.
Danny, tell the people who you are.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danny on Direct. I have my own little legal channel. I'm licensed in the state of Utah and Arizona. I am a general practitioner right now, but I was born and raised in civil litigation. So it is always fun to get some feedback from some actual criminal defense attorneys. And I think that we all have something wonderful to add to this, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
Now, for the guy who needs no introduction, obviously, Joe, good logic.
I need plenty of introduction. I'm Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Logic. I'm the one who everyone's always trying to constantly get up to that, cross that 100,000 threshold. Where I'm at 99, feeling like for the last 2 months at 99,000. So, yeah, I'm a New York litigator and turned podcaster, and these guys are all friends. So we're going to present to you the best possible trial coverage imaginable.
We're friends now.
Yeah, for the next 3 minutes.
And then, friends to
and then we turn into
the fist will fly.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I'm on civil law, Kurt Mueller. I'm here to comment on this. I think it's going to be a very interesting trial on the facts, and depending on how they play it, it could be very interesting right up to the end. So I'm looking forward to it and seeing if it's going to be as tight as I imagine it's going to be in my mind.
Now, this is so everyone out there understands what's going on. I don't know which stream you're watching it on, but all of our channels are pumping out this live stream, and your super chats we will be able to read and put on the screen. So we encourage people, if you have questions, you want to get involved with the panel, super chat us, and we will be able to see, no matter whose channel you are, we will be able to display the super chats and chats. So all the people talking from all the different streams will be able to do it. We're going to give you live coverage, and we're covering the trial from beginning to end. So we are in it for the long haul. So first things first, predictions. I know people say we can't predict jury verdicts, and I do all the time. So predictions. My prediction is I'm looking at a not guilty verdict because I think normal people will say, you paid people to make sure this didn't happen. It happened. It's not his fault because he trusted the people. But again, that's my prediction. I'm calling for a not guilty verdict. Let's go around. What does everybody else think? Let's start with Kurt.
I'm going to say guilty. I'll say guilty for today, and I'll change my mind later.
Guilty. All right. Kurt,
I'm undecided. I'm undecided.
Undecided?
I think it's a close call, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen.
I'm in a weird camp on this one because I actually feel zero rooting interest. I happen to think that, as a general rule, state prosecutors are a bunch of turds. I happen to think Alec Baldwin is kind of a turd. So I really, it's a fun place to be where I'm able to analyze and look for good lawyering versus bad lawyering and explain to you all why it's so. Like what we should be looking at and just sort of saying that was not good, or what we should admire, because there's a broad distinction in what we're going to see with respect to their skills that go on display. So
I think it's going to depend on the legal arguments, right? If they're able to argue from the perspective of a producer, because most people who know of Hollywood or have been around Hollywood can say, hey, look, actors, go ahead, Eric.
They can't.
They
judge knocked that out.
Right. Except they specifically stated that if it opens the door to that to that round of argument that they can bring it in. And so that's what I'm saying is in the event that that happens, I think they have a much stronger case, the prosecution does, because if you've been around Hollywood, it's reasonable for an actor to assume that, you know, the work for them to a certain extent has been done. Now, every single gun expert out there will tell you, no, you check the gun anyway, especially if you're going to be pointing it at people. But if the armorer didn't catch it and she didn't do her job and the assistant director didn't do his job and he didn't catch it, how do we expect a regular actor to catch it? I think the answer is that you can't. So it's just going to depend. And I'm really interested to see how things play out.
Except he's not a regular actor.
That's the
He
thing.
is an A-lister and the lead and absolutely the bully on the set. That has been, there's so much footage of him pushing everybody around, demanding everything and whipsawing everybody into shape that technically he managed to get the producer part taken out, but his bully pulpit of being, you know, the lead darling is a very, I think that can almost count right back into the producer because you watch everybody kowtow him. You watch everybody, you know, suck up and do whatever he says because, you know, it's him. If you don't have that star happy, you're dead.
It's interesting that the state lost a pretty critical motion with respect to being able to introduce evidence that he's a producer. And I was wondering if I can get your thoughts from you all as far as, you know, what you thought of the judge saying that she's not going to allow any evidence about that and any impact that might have with respect to his culpability in this case. Because
I'll start. So first off, I'll give my prediction too. I am predicting a guilty in this case, and it's largely because, well, I tend to agree with Nate and Danny that there are lots of people who would think that the actor gets to defer to the other experts on the set. I tend to think that the I didn't pull the trigger defense is not going to be sympathetic. That is going to be off-putting to the jury. So I don't think they're going to buy that, and that's ultimately going to be the key fact here. If you went off script, pulled the trigger when you weren't supposed to, that's a problem for him. But as far as the ruling and the producer angle goes, I didn't personally see this as a massive blow to the state because, at least in terms of how they presented it and how they argued it, what they were seeking to achieve with that, it really didn't seem all that significant. It seemed to largely be based on evidence that he was rushing people. But it was a little bit attenuated in terms of how did that actually contribute to the events that unfolded. And so the evidence that they are still going to be able to present, I think, is far more damning just in terms of him having kind of a habit of being quite negligent in how he's handling these firearms, treating them, you know, essentially like they're toys. So I don't tend to think it's going to have a massive effect on their ability to present their case, but, you know, time will tell.
Well, as you mentioned something interesting, because there's different elements to the fact that he's a producer. So one is, and she seemed to be concerned that the jury would say, because he's a producer, so now he has these extra duties associated with that. And those duties, in the same way Gutierrez didn't pull the trigger, but she's found guilty because of her negligence in the way she carried out her duties, that I think she was afraid that Baldwin would similarly be found guilty by the jury because of his negligence as a producer rather than for pulling the trigger. And I think if the way the state presented their arguments as to why they want to introduce him as producer may have been a very poor choice on their part, because instead of saying he's culpable because of things that led up to it that he failed to do as a producer, they could have argued and said, we want to talk about him as a producer because that should have heightened his concern about safety on the set, because he had special knowledge about all the issues of safety concerns and there being shootings going off and live rounds on the set. And he had access to that. If he was a regular actor who had no role as producer, he might not have had that information. But the analogy I gave last night on my show is the same way if you're driving down a mountain road and it's clear as day, you have one level of concern. But if it's snowy whiteout type of conditions, you're going to be taking it much more carefully. Because he's an executive producer, he had more knowledge that it was snowing on the set, so to speak, in this analogy, rather than a clear day. And that should have heightened his awareness when he's waving that gun around. And that's why they should have had that brought in to the set. Do you see what I'm saying?
Did you
agree.
see his interrogation though? His police interrogation, Joe. Because in his police interrogation, he was giving a master class on how everything worked for armorers. So that he
that's
literally
true.
displayed
Knowledge
his
is
own
there.
extensive knowledge with the police interrogation.
But I think what Joe is speaking to is what I was speaking to, is that because he is the producer who's on set and because he has an unlimited contract with them and he can do whatever the hell he wants, which lots of producers don't. Most producers, they're there for the investment. They're there to make a movie and walk away, right? They pick the director, they pick the hire staff, but they're not intimately involved in hiring in the same way that Alec Baldwin was. Now, was he over everybody's hiring? No. But did he know that the SAG actors were planning on booking it? Yeah, he knew that. He knew why they left. He did have special knowledge in the position he was in. He also had a motivation to try and rush the set to get this done as quickly as possible because he understood, at least in the back of his mind, part of his role as producers, he had to understand the implications of the budget.
That's true. This here's a super chat that seems to agree with Danny. Nate, former corpsman in Iraq, we spent hours on weapons checks. Even in a war zone, Danny is right. Check if it's in your hands, Nate. I think that's true. Thanks for putting this together, Eric and Nate. Thank you. But I think that's true. I think because the law doesn't have, and I gotta agree with Andrea. The law doesn't really have an exception for actors. It kind of says like everyone has to do this. And they're trying to kind of put in this exception because he was an actor on the set with all these safeguards. But at the end of the day, the law is like, you have to check. It's on you. Even if you have all this stuff, it ultimately is on you. So does that, so it's almost like jury nullification in a sense. Like, even though the law says that he's responsible, we're going to see if they can add this kind of exemption for actors.
I don't know that. I don't think I agree that it's an actor only thing, although the context where this would be applicable might be relatively narrow. But the issue for me is the mental state element, whether or not he's consciously disregarding a known or reasonably foreseeable risk. Now, if you're just a person normally operating a firearm by yourself, then it's inherently obvious. But my argument, if I were Baldwin's lawyers, would be something along the lines, in the same way that I don't check the rigging and the same way I don't check the safety equipment, and I rely on the safety professionals to check to make sure all that equipment is okay. I relied reasonably on the armorer to say that this was in fact a cold gun, and I did reasonably rely on it. And it is reasonable to rely because that's how things are done in the trade, to the extent that that's true. And so you're attacking the mental state requirement because he's no longer reckless, because it was reasonable for him to rely on that representation. Yeah, and then the state's argument just becomes, no, you're ultimately responsible no matter what. Get wrecked. And then I think that becomes an interesting about which of those narratives becomes more.
Yeah,
convincing.
no, I think I totally agree with Kurt on this one. It from my perspective clearly goes to the mental state element, because it just goes to what's reasonable under the circumstances. It's always going to be a fact dependent question. And so I know, I understand through the voir dire process that Alex Spiro, the attorney for Alec Baldwin, he's already started to introduce this notion of, will you trust your car to a mechanic and things like that. I think there's enough distinctions with that type of analogy that for me personally, I don't find it very persuasive. There's a big difference between a vehicle and a firearm. But I do think you could still create a context where you can have examples that would be far more on point. Like, for example, if you go for training on a new type of firearm, and so you are relying on somebody to show you how it works, to load it, to put it in position for you. Just, would you not be able to rely on that person in that situation? There's going to be a learning curve at some point for everybody with firearms, where you have to be relying on somebody else to kind of introduce you. So I think that there are ways to make that point that might be a little bit more direct.
But I think the last point
guys.
that you just made may hurt Alec Baldwin, because in his police interrogation, he's talking about 30 years experience with this stuff. He's talking about being, essentially an expert on films with, handling firearms. So it's not like this is just some new person who's been introduced to it. This is an experienced actor who, unfortunately, in this unfortunate accident, I really want to see how it goes, because I think you're right on the fact dependent question. I think it's extremely, and I believe it's going to be, if the juror believes what he did was reasonable. But I don't think
There's
the law
one-
makes that distinction, because the law really kind of pulls out firearm and makes it like this special category of like, if you got this, you got to check. Maybe not so much for vehicles, maybe not so much for the stage, but if you got a gun, the law says you got to check.
Yeah.
There's one more factor too. People are talking about the special knowledge as a producer. Remember, Lane Looper went to Alec Baldwin the night before and spoke to him in person and wrote an email to him along with other producers. So you might say, hey, I'm not talking to you as a producer, but you damn sure did get specific knowledge from the guy who quit the set, who said that there were safety concerns in addition to the hotel stuff. And that could bridge that gap too, could it not?
Yeah. I mean, I think it just becomes a question of it becomes an issue of exactly what the law in this state is with respect to this issue. It could get down to a very small nuance on the law. And I think it just becomes an issue of fact about, do you believe that it's reasonable to rely, or do you believe that, everyone's required to check every single time? And I think to some degree, the practice in the trade would be a reasonable argument for either side, depending on what the practice in the trade is. So if it is the practice in the trade that, actors just rely on the armor and they just go forth without doing anything, then I think that helps the defense. And if it's the practice in the trade that there's some obligation by the actor to check whatever that is, then that helps the prosecution. So, the reasonableness of it, as always, is context dependent. So what is the established norm within the context is going to go a long way to what's reasonable within that context.
I think something's happening in the courtroom. Yeah, well, we will see it. It's going to be interesting to hear both sides, but I think the argument from the defense is definitely going to be, we relied on all these people, and the argument from the other side is going to be, you should have checked.
You guys have been covering the motions on this so far. Any of you?
I watched the pretrial motions, the one that was just the other day. A lot of the pretrial stuff, I've read through it, but I didn't watch the hearings, at least not all of them. I did see there was a kind of foundational type of hearing recently involving the state's firearm experts, the Haigs. So that's where I kind of got my first impression of the attorneys in this case, because I didn't watch the Hannah Gutierrez trial. This is all coming out new to me as far as the specific facts of what happened.
Do you have thoughts on the abilities of these various attorneys? Have you formed any thoughts on that?
I don't like either of them. I find them both a bit challenging. Carrie Morrissey, the prosecutor, just has a presentation style that manages to come off as just incredibly whiny. Very, very defensive, just aggressive in a way that to me personally does not come across as very effective. It's grating. I don't like it. Mr. Spyro has a tendency to be a bit of a bully with the witnesses, at least is the impression I got from the
He's defense
trial
counsel.
hearings.
He's defense counsel, right?
He's the lead defense counsel. Now there are several other attorneys involved here. There is a second prosecutor who I find much more palatable, much more of a concise type of arguer, to the point and direct. So I like that. And then Mr. Nikas, I believe is his name, the other main attorney on Alec Baldwin's defense team. Similarly, they are the types of lawyers that seem to just let the facts speak for themselves, which is what I like. I don't need a lot of dramatics, a lot of histrionics and coloring. That's what your arguments are for. But even there, it's like it's just show don't tell. Is always going to be the better strategy. So I think that's going to be one of the interesting things to watch in this trial is who exactly takes on what role, and what kind of effect does that ultimately have on the impressions we get from the evidence.
We have an interesting question here. People are asking the difference between ordinary negligence and willful disregard. I'm assuming people are asking, if he is negligent, does that lead to a criminal conviction? Which it doesn't. We're really looking for recklessness. But can somebody explain the difference between just ordinary negligence and the recklessness we're looking for a conviction?
ordinary negligence is just your standard automobile accident. You have a duty to maintain and operate your car in a safe way. If you hit someone, it's presumably because you weren't paying attention. But you weren't particularly aware of any particular risk at the moment. You just were not operating a car safely. Recklessness would be a DUI. You're doing something with the knowledge that it poses a particular risk, namely getting drunk reduces your inhibition. So you're doing something with the knowledge that bad things will occur. What specific bad thing, you don't know, but that bad things will occur. So that's the difference. It's the knowledge of the risk.
That's why I think, because you need to have that willfulness, that's why I think his role as executive producer should put him in a different category than if he was just an actor on the set. Because as a producer, he had people coming and complaining to him about the situation on the set. If he was in some Warner Brothers studio and didn't have any sort of producer role, he wouldn't have had any of that knowledge. That knowledge is what I believe should help create and foment that willfulness, because he should be aware, hey, this is a more dangerous set than the ones I'm typically on, and that should have changed his conduct. And because it didn't, that's what makes it rise from something that would just be civil liability into something potentially criminal. And that's why I think that I respectfully disagree with Andrea. I think that could be a significant factor in assessing his guilt.
Well, Joe, I don't agree. I don't disagree with you at all. But I think where we disagree is that I don't think that's precluded by the judge's ruling. She's not saying that anything, if there's evidence that he knew something, that he was informed about something, that he saw something, that he had knowledge of the conditions on set, that's going to be admissible. It's just not, they're not going to be able to shoehorn that in to imply that he must have known simply by virtue of him having this role as the producer. So if they can show, somebody told him or he was present for something, my impression is that's going to come in. That's not limited by this ruling in limine.
And that's certainly if that's true, which you may be correct on that. That's certainly, and I would agree with you. It's likely that is the case, that there's going to be some sort of references along the way to the fact that they have to put in some evidence that he had knowledge, and why would he be getting this knowledge?
Yeah.
It's just a matter as to what responsibility does he have to process that knowledge? And perhaps as a producer, he has more responsibility to process it. And I understand that on a film set, they tend to give out titles like producer, like it's, from a Pez dispenser, and they'll just be like, and you're a producer, and you're a producer, and you're a producer. So perhaps it's kind of meaningless, to be fair. But, and perhaps the judge is concerned that the jury would take too much from it. I just think it's a serious loss, and it's possible the prosecution lost that motion because of the way they're presenting their intentions of using that role, rather than shoehorning it in by basically not saying we're going to try to have him held culpable for it. But it's only time's going to tell, right? So.
I love the second producer the second prosecutor by the way, the prosecutor who was just hired. What is her name? I wrote it down.
Erlinda Johnson.
Thank you. She's so brilliant, and she's so sharp, and I think she carries a lot of weight and credibility. And I just love watching her. Oh my goodness, you guys, the lead investigator's there. This should be fun. Is that lead investigator?
Hancock?
Oh no, it's not. I thought it was.
Oh yeah, that's Hancock.
Is it?
Handed the laptop. Yeah.
Oh, she toned down the Botox this time.
Does anybody think the Hannah? Oh, they're about to start. But the Hannah Gutierrez Reed conviction has any impact on this?
It should.
Yes, absolutely, it will. Because people are going to say, "Oh, well, justice has been done, and it should have been Hannah's job, and she screwed up." And how can we expect poor Alec Baldwin to know that he should check his gun? That's where it's going to go.
That's where I think I'm interested to see exactly what the prosecution strategy is here, because I don't, for me personally, the argument that he should have checked the gun, that's not a winner. The argument is he shouldn't have pulled the trigger. and that's where the real factual dispute, I think, is going to come down. He's obviously claiming, no, the gun malfunctioned and that didn't happen. Hence, they've had to go through all of this, investigation with the experts and that whole situation. And I think part of the reason why is because even under the best case scenario, as I understand the facts, he was not supposed to pull the trigger. That was not in the script. He was not directed to do that. That was him going off the reservation, so to speak. And so if that is the angle that they end up taking, from my perspective, that's going to be very difficult to overcome, because that's beyond just the ordinary safety rule of, treat every gun like it's, that's why you treat every gun like it's loaded. That's how you do it. You keep your finger off of the trigger until it is time for that gun to be fired.
So it's interesting. That last part you mentioned there is like a kind of a third element, because if you think about it, there's checking the gun, there's putting your finger on the trigger as opposed to not on the trigger, and then there's the accident of pulling the trigger. I actually think the accident pulling the trigger, once his finger is in that situation, that there's a bullet in there and his finger's on the trigger, I think that's more of an accidental type of thing, like you're a bull in a china shop and your finger's right on the trigger of a loaded gun. That, I think, is harder to establish willful criminal negligence. It's the other steps, including putting his finger on the trigger in the first place, or cocking it back in the first place. I think that part is the part where we rise from being a civil type of negligence into a willful recklessness that attaches criminal liability. You see what I'm saying? Because once he's in that position, that his finger's already there on the trigger of a loaded gun, it's much easier for there to be just a standard accident. So
Curtis, is the
that would
audio
be more civil.
No, I don't have any audio. I have the audio up, and I don't have any audio. I don't hear anything.
Well, none of us hear audio.
All right, I have audio.
It's very faint.
I'm gonna share mine. If you maybe find with the audio, Kurt, because there's definitely audio.
I'm going to ask Larry if they can hear it in the
is it
courtroom.
because it's going through my desktop?
I don't know, but I'm gonna play Lauren Climate to you.
To explain some trial procedure.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, that's the problem.
First of all, I want you to know
The audio.
this trial is being filmed, but you are not being filmed, and you will not be filmed at all throughout within the courtroom. Okay. All right. So I'm going to. This is a criminal.
We hear very faint
the
audio.
grand jury indictment. It's
Very good.
it's very formal, so we'll go with that. Count 1, involuntary manslaughter. Negligent use of a firearm in that on or about October 21, 2021, in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, state of New Mexico, at Bonanza Creek Ranch, located at 545 Bonanza Creek Road. The above named defendant did cause.
What happened?
We lost
Yeah,
audio.
yours is very low, Kurt. I thought you had it back.
I don't hear it at all. No, let's just stick with yours, Nate.
I'll stick with mine.
Sorry, I don't know why it's so low.
Of Helena Hutchins in the commission of negligent use of a firearm. Count 1 in the alternative, involuntary manslaughter, without due caution or circumspection, in that on or about October 21, 2021, in Santa Fe County, state of New Mexico, at Bonanza Creek Ranch, located at 545 Bonanza Creek Road, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87507. The above named defendant did cause the death of Helena Hutchins by an act committed with the total disregard or indifference for the safety of others, and the act was such that an ordinary person would anticipate that death might occur under the circumstances. Again, Mr. Baldwin is presumed innocent. The burden is always on the state to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. What I say now is the introduction of the case and the instructions. All right. Along with those instructions previously given, these are preliminary only and may be changed during or at the end of trial. First of all of you must pay close attention to the evidence. After you've heard all of the evidence in the case, I will read the final instructions of law to you. You will also receive a written copy of the instructions. You must follow the final instructions in deciding this case. And just so you know, there's going to be no transcript available to you. Juries have asked me that, so I'm telling you up front, okay? Again, the trial is expected to last 8 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. That's the trial. That does not include your deliberation time. The usual hours of trial will be from 8:30 to 5, typically, with a half hour for lunch. No, an hour for lunch, and then a morning break and an afternoon break. Again, please report to the jury lounge no later than 8:30 unless we're instructing you otherwise for different reasons. But in your mind, you can always expect 8:30 to be here, okay? Do not come into the courtroom unless you are accompanied by my bailiff, Steve, okay? You may take water into the courtroom with you, and you can also take coffee or tea or if you have a lid on your cup, okay? We stand up out of respect for you because you are the ultimate decision makers as to the facts in this particular case. So when you come into the courtroom, you can go ahead and be seated, and then we will take our seats. And again, it's important to hear. So please raise your hand at any time you can't hear. Don't be self-conscious about it. Don't wait until a couple of questions have been asked. You've got to, if you can't hear, you've got to shoot that hand up right away, okay? All right, this is a public proceeding, so people may go in and out. You may find yourself looking at who goes in and out, but after a while, you'll get used to it. But if there is anything that is distracting you from being able to listen and be involved in this case, please tell Steve immediately. He'll let me know, and I'll do my best to get rid of the distraction. As you know, the temperature we cannot control. All right, so sorry, we'll try to get the county in here if it plummets too high. I doubt it'll plummet too low. You are allowed but not required to take notes during trial. Steve has given you a pad and a pen. Okay. Please put your name on the front page of your pad and then take notes beginning on the second page. On breaks, follow Steve's instruction on whether to take the pad with you or whether to leave it on your chair. You don't have to worry about confidentiality. They'll be locked up at night, and when the trial is finished, they'll be shredded, okay? Don't let your notes take the place of your independent memory of the evidence. When taking notes, please do not forget to pay close attention to the trial. Listening and watching witnesses during their testimony will help you assess their appearance, behavior, memory, and whatever else bears on their credibility. Let's go through the order of trial for those that have not engaged in a criminal trial before. A criminal trial generally begins with the lawyers telling you what they expect the evidence to show. These statements and the statements made by the lawyers during the course of the trial can be of considerable assistance to you in understanding the evidence as it is presented at trial. Is there something distracting you, juror?
No.
I'm talking to the other one. Okay. Statements of the lawyers, however, are not themselves evidence. The evidence will be the testimony of the witnesses, exhibits, and any facts agreed to by the parties. After you have heard all of the evidence, I will give you final instructions on the law. The lawyers will argue the case, and then you will retire to the jury room to arrive at a verdict. It is my duty to decide what evidence you may consider. Your job is to find and determine the facts in this case, which you must do solely upon the evidence received here in court. It is the duty of a lawyer to object to questions, testimony, or exhibits the lawyer believes may not be proper, and you must not hold such objection against the objecting party. I will sustain objections if the question or evidence sought is improper for you to consider. If I sustain an objection to evidence, you must not consider such evidence, nor may you consider any evidence I have told you to disregard. By itself, a question is not evidence. You must not speculate about what would be the answer to a question that I rule cannot be answered. It is for you to decide whether the witnesses know what they are talking about and whether they are being truthful. You may give the testimony of any witness whatever weight you believe it merits. You may take into account, among other things, the witness's ability and opportunities to observe, memory, manner, or any bias or prejudice that the witness may have, and the reasonableness of the testimony considered in light of all of the evidence of the case. No ruling, gesture, or comment I make during the course of the trial should influence your decision in this case. At times, I may ask questions of witnesses. If I do, such questions do not in any way indicate my opinion about the facts or indicate the weight I feel you should give to the testimony of the witnesses. questions by jurors. Ordinarily, the attorneys will develop all pertinent evidence. It is the exception rather than the rule that an individual juror will have an unanswered question after all of the evidence is presented. However, if you feel an important question has not been asked or answered, write it down on a piece of your notepaper and give it to Steve before this is important, before the witness leaves the stand, okay? I will decide whether or when your question will be asked. Rules of evidence or other considerations apply to questions you submit and may prevent the question from being asked. If the question is not asked, please do not give it any further consideration. Do not discuss it with the other jurors, and please do not hold it against either side that you did not get an answer. Conduct of jurors. Again, very important. You must decide the case solely upon the evidence received here in court. You must not consider anything you may have read or heard about the case outside the courtroom. During the trial and your deliberations, you must avoid news accounts of the trial, whether they be on radio, television, the internet, or in a newspaper or other written publication. You must not visit the scene of the incident on your own. You cannot make experiments with reference to the case, and in this day and age, you cannot Google or research any of the subject matter of this case, including each other. Very important, as I said yesterday, when you go in that room, you don't talk about the case. You wait until you are a jury that is deliberating, okay? If an exhibit is admitted in evidence, you should examine it yourself and not talk about it with other jurors until you retire to deliberate. It is important that you keep an open mind and not decide any part of the case until the entire case has been completed and submitted to you. Your special responsibility as jurors demands that throughout this trial, you exercise your judgment impartially and without regard to any sympathy, bias, or prejudice. To minimize the risk of accidentally overhearing something that is not evidence in this case, please continue to wear your jurors' badges while in and around the courthouse. If someone happens to discuss the case in your presence, report that fact immediately to Steve. Although it is natural to visit with people you meet, please do not talk with any of the attorneys, parties, witnesses, or spectators, either in or out of the courtroom. If you meet in the hallways or elevators, there's nothing wrong with saying a good morning or a good afternoon, but your conversation should end there. If the attorneys, parties, and witnesses do not greet you outside of court or avoid riding in the same elevator with you, they are not being rude. They are just carefully observing this rule. All right, so we're going to begin the case. The case starts with opening statements. The state begins first because they have the burden of proof, and then the defendant. All right, go ahead, counsel.
Here we go. The fireworks begins, huh?
Quick housekeeping matter while Ms. Johnson's getting set up.
All right.
Oh, good. Is she doing the opening?
I think it is. Alec Baldwin looks pretty good.
He does.
He fixed his hair from the other day.
He needs to keep his glasses on because he looked rough when he came in. He had those big caterpillars under his eyes when he first hit.
The instruction about wearing the juror badge is interesting. When I was covering the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, I saw persons who I thought were from the jury, but didn't know for sure, and may or may not have commented something about the fact how the whole world knows that Ghislaine Maxwell is guilty. So, but I don't know that they were jurors. But it's interesting that they're identifying that way for the purpose of just, I guess, discouraging others from influencing the jury.
Yeah, this is probably a small town, courthouse too, so everybody's kind of mingled in together. It's not like if you're in New York, how they have the secret areas and the jurors and all that stuff. So
true,
they're doing the best they can.
I'm sort of surprised the babies aren't there. I thought for sure that Hilaria might bring in the children. I just can't wait to hear her speak. That's let's be honest. I'm here for Hilaria.
Yeah, can you guys identify the attorneys by name when we see them on screen next? This way, maybe we can the audience can get a feel for who is who as the players start coming out.
He looks much more like his actor self. This is a much better look for him than I think during the motion hearings.
I was hoping he was going to come out wearing his Trump makeup,
Make America great again.
When someone plays
Oh, here it is.
with a real gun in a real life workplace, and while playing make-believe with that gun violates the cardinal rules of firearm safety, people's lives are endangered, and someone could be killed. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this case is about. It's simple, it's straightforward. The evidence will show that someone who played make-believe with a real gun and violated the cardinal rules of firearm safety is the defendant, Alexander Baldwin. You will hear over the course of the next few days that in the fall of 2021, a movie called Rust began filming at the Bonanza Creek Ranch just south of Santa Fe in Santa Fe County. You will learn that this movie was a Western with a lot of gun action. And while it was a movie set, it was a real life workplace for many people. But you will hear this workplace was on a tight budget. And you will learn that some of the people who were hired to work at this workplace were very inexperienced. And one of those was the armorer, a very young woman named Hannah Gutierrez Reed. You will hear testimony from crew members who worked on the set, who will tell you that to them, Ms. Gutierrez's inexperience was obvious. You will also learn that this workplace has some talented people. And one of those was the director of photography, a vibrant 42-year-old rising star named Helena Hutchins. You will also learn that the director of this film was Joel Souza, another talented individual who cares deeply for his projects. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that like in many workplaces, there are people who act in a reckless manner and place other individuals in danger and act without due regard for the safety of others. That, you will hear, was the defendant, Alexander Baldwin, the lead actor on this film. You will learn that this movie began filming on or about October 6, 2021. But the defendant did not arrive on set to begin working until about October 13th. And you will learn that prior to arriving on the set to work, he requested to be assigned the biggest gun available. So he was assigned this revolver, a replica of an 1873 single-action revolver manufactured by Peta Firearms in Italy. You will hear from Alessandro Pieta, who will tell you he manufactured this gun. And he will tell you he manufactured it in 2015. And he will explain the quality control measures that Peta Firearms follows in order to ensure that firearms that are manufactured by Peta Firearms don't have any problems or issues. Mr. Pieta will tell you that this firearm he himself manufactured, and that when Pieta sent it to EMF, which is the company that distributes firearms for Peta Firearms in the United States, this gun was in perfect working condition. You will hear from Justin Neal, who is a representative of EMF, a company out of California that has historically been known to provide firearms to the movie industry. Mr. Neal will tell you that when EMF received this firearm in 2017, it was in perfect working order. And in fact, when EMF had this firearm, it was subjected to numerous quality control inspections because it was used as a show gun at gun shows. The evidence will show that in September of 2021, an individual by the name of Seth Kenny was contacted by the folks with Rust Production. They asked Mr. Kenny if he would be able to provide some firearms for the filming, for use during the filming of Rust. You will learn that Mr. Kenny owns PDQ Firearm and Prop. It's a duly licensed firearms dealership. Mr. Kenny then contacted EMF and ordered several single action replica revolvers. And in September, or on September 29, 2021, Mr. Kenny purchased this gun. And you will hear that Mr. Kenny received it from EMF and it was in perfect working order. The only thing that Mr. Kenny did to this gun was to insert the firing pin, because since it was a show gun, it didn't have a firing pin. But you'll learn that that's a very easy step. All he had to do was just insert the pin, and that's it. And then Mr. Kenny had the firearms, this one and some other firearms, transferred to the set of Rust at the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And on October 13, 2021, the defendant was supposed to have a training session with this gun and this young armorer. But you will see that during this training session, the defendant had somebody or a couple of people filming him while he's running around shooting this gun. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, or you'll hear during this trial the use of the words prop gun. And you'll learn a prop gun is this real gun. It's not a toy. It's not made of rubber. It's a real gun. You will also see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that during the days before that fateful October 21st day, the defendant handled this firearm multiple occasions. You will see video footage of the defendant firing this firearm, working perfectly fine. But you'll see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that each time the defendant handled this firearm, he did not do a safety check with that inexperienced armorer. And you'll hear that the reason he didn't do a safety check is because he didn't want to offend her. The evidence you will see will paint a real-life picture of a real-life workplace where this defendant mishandled this gun. You will see him using this gun as a pointer to point at people, to point at things. You will see him cock the hammer when he's not supposed to cock the hammer. You will see him put his finger on the trigger when his finger's not supposed to be on the trigger. You will hear about numerous breaches of firearm safety with this defendant and this use of this firearm. And the evidence will show that on the morning of October 21st, 2021, the camera crew walked off set. And you will learn that one of the reasons that camera crew walked out is because they were concerned over safety breaches with the use of firearms. The evidence will show that the morning of October 21st started out a couple of hours behind. They filmed some scenes at this church on the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And you will see that one of those scenes required the defendant to pull out his gun. This was in the morning. Pull out his gun. And you'll hear the director tell him, pull it out and hold it. And the first time, you'll see evidence the defendant does what the director tells him. But you will hear the director tell you that many times the defendant would do his own thing. So then the director in the morning asked him, okay, do it again, just like you did now. The defendant pulls out the gun, but this time he cocks the hammer. The evidence will show they then broke for lunch. And around 1:30 or so, they came back to this church to do what's called a blocking. The evidence will show that Ms. Hutchins wanted to do a blocking for an insert, and you will learn what a blocking is, just working out the details of the moves of the actor. Wasn't even a rehearsal. You will hear from one of the witnesses who walked into the church and saw the defendant kind of playing with his gun. And then you will see evidence or hear evidence that Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were talking to the defendant about doing this insert. And the insert was just supposed to be from here to here. And it was supposed to be of the defendant just slowly taking his gun out of his holster, and just holding it at an angle. The evidence will show that someone asked the armorer to bring the defendant's gun to him. And she did. She brought it into the church, showed it to David Halls, who you will learn was the first assistant director. The gun was empty. Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. But then you will hear that Ms. Gutierrez was given the gun back, and she took it and loaded it with dummy rounds. And what you will learn is that dummy rounds are inert rounds. They look like real rounds, but they are very easy to tell that they are not because they'll rattle. Ms. Gutierrez then went back to the church, showed the revolver to the first assistant director very fast. They only checked about 3 rounds, very quick. And they missed 1 round. You will learn that one of the rounds in that revolver was a real round. And the evidence will show that Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. And what you will learn is that once again, the defendant failed to do a gun check or a safety check with this armorer. So he takes the firearm, puts it in his holster. Then Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were doing this blocking. And the evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that the defendant again did his own thing. You will hear from an individual by the name of Kent Jorgensen. Mr. Jorgensen will tell you that he's been involved in drafting and revising movie set safety rules. You will learn that these movie set safety rules require actors like the defendant to treat every firearm as though it's loaded, to never point a firearm at another person, and to never put your finger on the trigger unless you're prepared to shoot or to destroy whatever's in front of you. The evidence will show that on October 21st, 2021, after that lunch break, the defendant once again violated those set safety rules. And during this blocking, the director had instructed him to just slowly take out that gun and just hold it at an angle. But you will see that the defendant takes it out quickly the first time, points it. And you will hear witness testimony who will tell you the first time he does it, his finger is on or around the trigger. He does it again, takes it out very fast, points it. And once again, you will hear testimony that his finger was on or around the trigger. And the evidence will show that that third and fatal time, he takes it out once again, fast, hammer's cocked, he cocks the hammer, points it straight at Ms. Hutchins, and fires that gun, sending that live bullet right into Ms. Hutchins' body. You will learn that this bullet was a .45 caliber round that entered Ms. Hutchins' body right underneath her right underarm. It perforated her right lung. It traveled through her spine, lacerating her spinal cord, and then it exited on the left side of her back. That bullet then went into Joel Souza's right shoulder, and it came to rest in his back, from where doctors removed it once he was transported to St. Vincent's Hospital here in Santa Fe. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, that Ms. Hutchins did not have the same fate. You will see the aftermath of the shooting, and you will see medics frantically working to save Ms. Hutchins, to stabilize her, to transport her, to airlift her to UNM Hospital. But the damage from that bullet was too much. Ms. Hutchins succumbed to her injuries and bled to death. The evidence will show that meanwhile, after the shooting, the defendant began to claim he didn't pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that's not possible. You will hear from Mr. Peta himself, who will tell you that gun will not discharge without a pull of the trigger. You will hear from firearms experts who will tell you that gun will not discharge without a pull of that trigger. The evidence will show that law enforcement officials arrived at the scene on October 21st after the shooting and immediately took this gun into their custody. Then later, they asked the FBI for assistance in processing this gun for forensics and examination. You will learn that the gun and some ammunition that was taken from the set and from PDQ arms were sent to the FBI for analysis. You will learn that the gun first went to the DNA section of the lab, where a DNA analyst found the defendant's DNA on this gun. And then the gun was transferred to the firearms and tool mark section of the lab, where a firearms examiner examined this gun very carefully and closely. Bryce Ziegler, who is the firearms examiner for the FBI, will tell you that when he received this firearm, he first examined it. He didn't see any defects, didn't see any modifications. He tried and he checked the hammer in the 3 different positions, cocking positions. He checked the quarter cock position, fine. Checked the half cock position, fine. Checked the full cock position, fine. And when he held it in the full cock position, you will hear that hammer held until he pulled the trigger. You will also hear that Mr. Ziegler test fired this gun 12 different times. And each time that gun fired as it was designed. Each time when he pulled that trigger, it fired. And he will tell you that not once did this gun malfunction or discharge on its own. Now, the evidence will show that because the defendant had been claiming that he didn't pull the trigger, Mr. Ziegler suggested one last test to the Sheriff's Department. Mr. Ziegler told the Sheriff's Department that he could do what's called an accidental discharge test. He obtained authorization to do this test, and you will hear that he left that test for last because that test could potentially damage the gun. Mr. Ziegler went forward after he received this authorization and conducted the accidental discharge test. And you will hear, ladies and gentlemen, that during that test, a couple of the internal components of this firearm damaged. You will hear that the trigger sear and the full cock hammer notch were damaged during the accidental discharge testing. The evidence will show, however, that before this accidental discharge testing by the FBI, this gun functioned and worked perfectly fine. You'll see the video footage of the multiple occasions during which the defendant used this firearm on the set, and each time he fired it, it was working just fine. And in fact, you'll hear evidence that the defendant himself admitted in December of 2021 that this gun didn't have any mechanical problems. You will hear from the two of the country's leading experts on firearms forensics, Michael Haig and Lucian Haig. And they will tell you that they examined the revolver and the damaged pieces extensively. They will tell you that the damage to the full cock trigger notch is consistent with the accidental discharge testing that was conducted by the FBI. Lucian Haig will tell you that in August of 2023, he examined the trigger sear, the other piece, and that when he looked at it initially with the naked eye, there was nothing wrong with it. He couldn't see anything. But then he put it under the microscope and he noticed some kind of rough microscopic diagonal lines on the surface of the trigger sear. And since at the time he did not know how Mr. Ziegler had conducted the accidental discharge test, he opined that these very small microscopic lines were likely not caused by the FBI accidental discharge testing, but he could not exclude that as the source of those lines. Then a few weeks ago, Mr. Haig will tell you that he spoke with Mr. Ziegler and he learned how Mr. Ziegler had conducted the accidental discharge test. Mr. Ziegler explained that he affixed that firearm onto a fixed platform and then struck the firearm on 6 different planes with a rubber mallet. And Mr. Ziegler explained to Mr. Haig that he had not affixed the mallet to another fixed device. Instead, he did it freehand. Mr. Haig will tell you, with his 50 plus years of experience as a firearms forensics expert, he opined or concluded that those very tiny microscopic diagonal lines on the surface of the trigger sear were likely caused by the FBI's accidental discharge test. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that regardless of how those tiny microscopic lines got on that trigger sear, these firearms experts will tell you that those would not affect the functionality of this firearm. At the end of this case, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to conclude and be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that on October 21st, 2021, that gun the defendant had asked to be assigned worked perfectly fine as it was designed, and that the fatal and one of the main problems that afternoon of October 21st was that the defendant didn't do a gun safety check with that inexperienced armorer. He pointed the gun at another human being, cocked the hammer, and pulled that trigger in reckless disregard for Ms. Hutchins' safety. And you will be convinced that the only true and just verdict in this case, so that true justice can be served, is a verdict of guilty to involuntary manslaughter.
Good job.
All right, here we go.
Very
To the point.
solid.
Great.
Nice work.
So this is the pause part. Let's talk about the opening. Did she do it? Did she make it happen?
I didn't love it. I'm just being straight. She told me
You're gonna
far
get
too many
cold.
details and not enough about what the details mean, not enough about why the details matter. I want to come out of the opening knowing what I'm supposed to feel, not what are the names of the people and the pieces of the gun that they're going to be talking about. That's just my take.
And I think that Andrea's, I always call you Andrea, and it's Andrea, right? So I always get it wrong. I feel
Hey,
like
you is just fine, Joe.
Hey, right, okay.
Oh.
I feel like the intelligent brunette in the middle there is making a great point. Is making a great point that you want to focus on the legal element to it. This is how we're going to establish these elements and tie it all together as to this is what makes willful. You're going to find him to be willfully reckless, and here's why he was willful. There's the willfulness, and tie it in for them. So this way, when those boxes get checked, they'll understand. Oh, boom, that's checked off now. And I think that's the point of the opening statement. But overall presentation of facts, that was, should cover those bases. Yeah, I agree. I think it's like a six, maybe a 6.5 on the opening.
I think it's
Yeah.
about right.
Yeah,
I think it's a little paint by numbers, but it was reasonably well organized, and it didn't overstay its welcome, which I also appreciate. It also highlighted like the major elements that were going to be talked about. I appreciate Andrea's criticism that it didn't have enough emotionality to it, but I thought it was a serviceable opening that laid out things in a reasonably understandable way. So compared to recent opening arguments we've heard, for example, in Karen Reed, I thought she did a fine job.
I think she did great. I'm sorry. I think you guys are putting her at like, you're putting the standard like up at like ideal. And if you compare this to what we have been seeing, like Kurt said, in any other trial, I thought that was a great opening. She comes in, she lays out the facts. She says, here's what you're going to hear from so-and-so. This is why this matters here, right? Some of the language that she used was excellent. You're going to learn, you're going to see, you're going to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that this is what's going to happen. And all of the facts are going to convince you, not me. We don't have to do that, And she said those things without having to explicitly say them. I thought that was a great delivery, great opening. Could it be a little bit more, quick? Sure, for sure. Could it be a little more entertaining? Absolutely. But she's not there to entertain. She's there to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think she did a great job at establishing some level of credibility with her delivery. Definitely would have been 1,000 times better than whatever Morrissey would have given us. So.
Well, I'm going to tell you
what she did that I did like very much is that the make believe. I thought the make believe that was a great point and a great theme. Yep. I would have liked to have seen more of that. Flesh that out a little bit more. You're going to see that, because these are real guns. This is why there are safety standards. This is why the safety standards tell you that these you have to treat them like they're a real gun. I just. I agree. I'm being nitpicky. I mean, that's my job. I'm critiquing. So I don't want to suggest she didn't do anything good by any means. I thought that was an excellent, excellent starting line for her opening. I just would have liked to see that carry through a little bit more.
I'm going to say it. Listen, openings and closings are performative. You're performing for the jury. And don't get me wrong. I think her tone and everything was on point, but I also got to say, it didn't move the needle for me. After the opening, I'm not going and saying she's guilty. I'm not, I'm just saying, okay, I need to see more. And I think a good opening at the end of that, you'd be like, all right, he's guilty unless this other, force the other side to change me. So I do think there was some, but I do think if you're talking about just a law school opening, did she hit all the points? Did she make a? Can we go up and say, did she get the B or A in a law school? Yes. But I don't think it moved me as somebody who's watching this to say he's obviously guilty, which I would expect from an open, because it's you're telling your narrative, you're giving that whole speech. And I do think her use of some of the terminology, I thought that was great. I thought the whole make believe but real gun, I thought that was great. But at the end of the day, you're here to convince me, not to just give me a presentation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is actually a rant that came in by me a minute ago, which should have been simpler. These are the rules of firearm safety. He broke every one of them. He was responsible for his actions as an actor and for his set as a producer. And I think that in an opening statement is different from closing arguments. One is a statement, the other is an argument, and the distinction there is just laying out facts rather than making the impassioned plea as they're about to head into deliberations. So I'm okay with there being a little bit less emotion, but a little bit more clinical and perhaps with some sort of colorful language to make sure you're keeping their attention throughout. I think that simplicity is perhaps better. But some of it is a style thing. As far as how much detail, someone actually asked me that during the chat, and I was chatting with them privately. I think it is a style thing as far as how much detail am I going to give, and that's really something that we're obviously here to nitpick. I totally agree with you on that. And would I give that much detail? No, but this prosecutor is not alone in laying out too much of the nitpicky details. And maybe it's more effective. I don't know. I'm just saying.
This was a commando raid, right? she was in and out before we blinked. This was definitely a commando. Let me hit all the flips and get out. I just don't think she was effective in her commando raid, right? But it was nice. And as a juror, if I was in, I would appreciate the quickness of this.
Yeah.
Not even a half an hour.
The length has got to be the good point right alone. Get in, get out, get it done. It's like I'm here for it, man.
Here we go. Let's see what the defense now comes up with.
This is going to be great. I have high expectations and high hopes. Yes. This is the attorney I wanted to argue this. This is
What's the name? Who is that?
Spyro. This is Alex Spyro.
like the dragon.
This is somebody who's talking about the Karen Lee, right? The bar.
He is going to be the antithesis of what we just saw in terms of being entertaining, being fiery. Yeah.
Good advocacy for their clients.
He's very performative too, and I love that in an attorney. He's a lot of fun.
Alec Baldwin committed no crime.
Oh, here we go. So let me go back. There
This was an unspeakable tragedy, but Alec Baldwin
Little
committed
letter.
no crime. He was an actor.
This is the top.
Playing the role of Harlan Rust. An actor playing a character can act in ways that are lethal, that just aren't lethal on a movie set. These cardinal rules, they're not cardinal rules on a movie set. I don't have to tell you much more about this because you've all seen gunfights.
I don't think that's going to land.
And the reason that can happen is because safety is ensured before the actor. On this movie set, there were people responsible for ensuring the safety of the set and the firearm. Those people failed in their duties, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. The most critical issue in this case is how a real bullet got on a movie set. The evidence will show that real bullets are never supposed to be on movie sets. Movie sets use dummies and blanks. Movie sets use dummies, fake inert bullets that look like real bullets, they don't go bang, for when you want a close-up of the gun. You can't tell them apart from live bullets by looking at them, which is why live bullets can be nowhere near a movie set. And if the director wants a shot of the gun going, bang, poof, there's blanks that they can use. And those blanks look nothing like real bullets. And they are used for those shooting scenes. And, they'll play these videos that they described of Alec's, firearm in the movie going bang, poof. And people are conditioned to seeing people firing weapons and thinking that's a dangerous act. That's a dangerous act. And they will play those videos and give you that image to try to tarnish him in your eyes. But that's not what happened here. On this set, there was a real bullet, something that should never be on a movie set, something which has nothing to do with making a movie. And you will hear no evidence, not one word, that Alec Baldwin had anything to do with that real bullet being brought onto that set. The second critical issue in this case is why did a real bullet get loaded into a prop movie gun? It is undisputed that the bullet was loaded into the gun by the armorer, the person on set whose responsibility it was to ensure the gun was safe. And so picture that moment of the armorer placing a live bullet into that firearm. You hear the prosecutor say, he did this or he performed in a certain way, he picked out. It's to tarnish him in your eyes. You will hear no evidence whatsoever. No evidence that anything Mr. Baldwin did, that something he did in that moment, that horrible moment when she put that bullet in that gun, none of it had anything to do with Alec Baldwin. And finally, the first assistant director's job, the head of safety, Dave Halls, checks it before it goes to the actor. And he will tell you he made a tragic mistake. He failed to detect a live bullet. And Alec Baldwin had nothing to do with that either. So all this evidence that the prosecutor just outlined, all of it, has nothing to do with these critical issues. Nothing. Which leads us to this. The evidence will show that on a movie set, safety has to occur before the gun is placed in the actor's hands. In this case, this unique case on a movie set, the prop gun was placed in Mr. Baldwin's hands and cold gun was announced, meaning it had been checked and double checked by those responsible to ensure the gun was safe. It was just a prop. They all thought it was just a prop and could do no harm. The actor's job is to act, to rehearse, to choreograph his moves, to memorize his lines. He's Harlan Rust. he's an outlaw running for his life, who in the incident in question, he's pulling a six-shooter to try to defend himself. That's why the gun has to be safe before it gets into the actor's hands. His mind is somewhere else, in the being of another, a century away, an outlaw. He must be able to take that weapon and use it as the person he's acting would. To wave it, to point it, to pull the trigger like actors do, in ways that would be lethal in the real world, but are not lethal on a movie set. And I'm going to show you that scene now before lunch. And if we could just play action.
I'm gonna go find some help.
I don't need no damn help.
You're gonna die if I don't.
He's wounded on the run. Okay, again. Continue.
These were his hero props, remember? That's what was testified last to.
Alec Rust. You just stand up nice and slow, toss any weapons you have.
He's on the church pew, bleeding, his hand gripping the revolver. He would defend himself against the men in the movie. Play.
One more. You good? Ready? Alec Rust. Did you get up nice and slow, toss any weapons you have?
Well, how close can I get right there?
Joey, you want me to wait to give you that line till he lands? Till camera lands?
Yeah.
Yep.
This one? Draw your gun and look up. Point your gun, okay?
Okay, which way? Camera right or left?
Just for now.
So camera left for now. I'll stand right here for you, Alec.
So whip it out. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me get this all greased. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Okay, ready? Ready.
And set. 30 and action.
Alec Rust.
Ready, ready?
It's
They
the
wanted to
scene.
do it again. There's no
The scene.
danger.
Supposed to be
They
pulled
wanted
the
to do it
trigger.
again.
And set. Ready. And action.
Alec Rust.
Oof, that was rough.
Nice.
It's not the first time that a woman said that was rough when he whipped it out.
It's a scene similar
Oh,
to
come on.
scenes we've all seen in movies and television.
This is a
Performed
great,
by
a
thousands
great
of
opening, though.
actors.
I'm going to say,
And the scene
guys.
that continues after lunch is the same scene. It's just not, unfortunately, captured on videotape. And the scene they envisioned and acted out, that prop gun was positioned in the afternoon so close to the camera that you could see inside, that you could feel it. You could feel that it was loaded. And it was loaded, of course, with dummies. Dummies to make it look like a real gun. But this one time, one of those dummies was a real bullet. The real bullet was not known to anyone in that church. Amongst the actors, directors, and crew in the scene, everyone was doing exactly how they go about their business every day on a movie, not as if some lethal element had been included in the environment. You will see creativity and movement and everyone talking and vibrant. No one had any idea that this venomous, toxic element had been inserted into this magic they were creating. But it did. It entered that place. It killed an amazing person. It wounded another, and it changed lives forever. And so to find out what happened on that movie set, you need to do something that the prosecutors could never do. You have to step back and remember what they were doing on a movie set. What were Helena Hutchins, the cinematographer, Joel Souza, the director, and Alec Baldwin, the actor, doing on Bonanza Creek Ranch? You know, movies and magic have always been closely associated. The first people that made movies were magicians. And this imagination that happens in movies, King Kong, he can stand above a city and Superman can fly, horses and snakes and gun battles. For this to all work, for cinematography, what Helena did to work, for acting to work, you have to be so close to the barrier of real and imagined that the viewer feels that they're there, that it's real. The viewer can't see strings from the stuntman. The stuntman must leap. The snake must hiss. And guns happen in movies all over this country for many decades. Bang, bang. You've all seen it. Guns have been an element of theater and film and television since the earliest of times. Depictions of war and combat, Spartacus, it stirs audiences because it feels real. Later films, Platoon, Apocalypse Now, they showed the unvarnished realities of war. This ranch, Santa Fe, it had been the scene to many gunfights and movie scenes, well before Alec was even born. Laramie, Butch and the Sundance Kid, and these westerns.
Your Honor, may we approach?
We want to do an approach in the middle of the opening? Oh, come on.
But he's
arguing now.
Yeah. I'm going to say he's doing a hell of a job, though.
It's landing flat for me. I like the idea,
Very
but not
flat.
the way it's presented.
I
Not
think
working for me at all. Starting off with actors. Actors are special people that don't have to follow the same rules as all of you loser normies who aren't on the TV set is not going to land with the jury.
The evidence will show that guns are in movies because movies are about people's lives and guns are in people's lives. So let's talk about the evidence and how the lethal bullet got there. How did this happen and how did it unfold?
Yeah.
The evidence will be the following. Everybody on a movie set has a role. The armorer armors, the director directs, the actor acts. They work in harmony, but they have a division of responsibility. Safety being important has the first assistant director, whose name is Dave Halls, above the armorer and the sort of the safety of the set. And on that day in question, the cast and the creative directors and crew in the church, it's a fake church. Their actors are not in their normal clothes, it's costumes. There's debris falling from the ceiling, it's fake debris. And they yell out cold gun. And that is an important term you're going to learn in this case. It means that the gun is cold. No one need worry. But even that requires a little bit more explanation. Cold gun doesn't mean no live bullets. There are for sure 100% no live bullets on movie sets. That's unimaginable. Cold means you don't even have the fake blank poof in it. You don't need to worry even about eye gear or earplugs for that fake bang. It means it's empty, inert, cosmetic, can do no harm. Cold guns can't hurt people. It's impossible, literally impossible for a cold gun to hurt somebody. You could hurt you more by dropping it on your foot. And that's why these artists are carrying on in their art. Cold gun, all clear to go. And the armorer on this set hands a prop gun to Alec, like she had done times before, like people have done with him in movies for a generation. And he's there. He's in the movie set church with his movie set gear and his holster, and he takes his movie set gun. And he's deeply focused in that moment on his character. The artists, the crew members, they're moving around him. Again, no eye gear or earplugs, nothing to protect against. They carry on. They practice. They rehearse. They take a lunch break. Some folks leave, some don't. They continue the scene. Dave Halls, the head of safety, is actually practicing the movement so they can frame the footage that will happen after lunch. And the prop cold gun comes back. The prop cold gun comes back, cold gun. They call it again. Same gun, again, safe. The first assistant director, Dave Halls, head of safety for the entire film, a man with decades of experience, comes and takes the additional step and inspects the gun, verifies again, cold gun. Everyone relax. Go back to focus on the making of a movie. There's nothing in the gun that can hurt anybody. And Alex sits on that pew. And the creative directors, the crew, they're moving around him, in front of him. And Harlan Rust, he begins, like the prosecutor told you, rehearsing, acting. This is a completely mundane, uneventful, routine act on a movie set. And so everybody carries on. Nobody fathomed, imagined, foresaw any possible danger. They moved around Alec as he practiced his draw. As the prosecutor put it, working out the details of the move in the actor. He does it again, does it in a different way. Nobody bats an eye. And they will tell you that the investigation revealed that Baldwin was practicing drawing and pointing the weapon of the scene with guidance and instruction from Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza. The gun goes off. Everybody's shocked. Alec is startled. He immediately says, "I didn't mean to shoot I didn't pull the trigger." Immediately. What the hell just happened? They collectively exclaim. Shock turns to panic. 911 is called.
Ambulance out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've had 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally. You said someone was shot? 2 people accidentally with gunshot at on movie set, Bonanza Creek Ranch. Send it. I'll connect you with medical dispatcher. Don't need that. San Jose Fire and EMS, what's the location of the emergency? Bonanza Creek Ranch has had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately. Okay. This fucking AD that yelled at me at lunch because asking about revisions. This motherfucker. Did you see him lean over my desk and yell at me?
Okay, then. Well, all right.
He's got a disgusted gun. He's responsible for what happened in the now, Mimi? No. I'm a strip supervisor. How many people are injured? 2 that I know of. I was sitting, we were rehearsing, and it went off, and I ran out.
Accidentally shot on a movie set with a prop gun. The fucking AD, it was his responsibility.
Yeah.
How is that admissible?
I don't know, but
I don't know.
Police, EMS,
it got through.
the cast and crew are outside.
And that's damn
trying to figure out what happened. Frantic. Talking to those responsible for the prop and its safety. The armorer is yelling, sorry. Hall's the first assistant director is panicked. The prop master, Sarah Zachary, I don't know exactly where she is at that point, but they check the gun feverishly. They take the ammo out of the gun. They look at it. What the heck happened? They go back to the prop cart that houses the ammo. They're touching the gun and manipulating the gun, emptying it. They go and move some stuff off the prop cart, trying to figure it out. Sarah Zachary, the head of props, will tell you she threw some stuff out. And eventually, of course, EMS and police arrive pretty soon thereafter. And Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza, the director, are transported to the hospital where Helena tragically passes away. And I'm not going to be asking questions about her condition after she was wounded or the medical interventions that followed. Her injuries, the efforts to revive her, are not in dispute in this case. The evidence will be there. The prosecutor may present some of these emotionally charged images, but we're not going to be asking questions about that, and it's not an issue in dispute in this case. You jurors are allowed to ask yourselves whether or not that should be the focus or the focus should be the evidence. So police enter the scene. They have lapel cameras. Thank God they have lapel cameras. You want to see what happens? The evidence will show you can play the videotape. Want to see if they take the right gun? Play the videotape. Want to make sure what the people said or did, they're remembering correctly? Play the videotape. And so they immediately recover the prop gun and they secure it. That's off to the side. And the reason that you preserve things in the moment is so that you know what existed in the moment, the evidence in the moment, the people and the witnesses and what they said in the moment. These folks, the members of Rust, they'd never been through anything like this before. That is why what they originally said matters so much in this case. If you remember anything I say today as the evidence proceeds, remember that. Look at the evidence of what the people of Rust said and did that day. Life changes, memories change. There are human motivations, internal pressure, external pressure. That's why preservation is so important. So the police continue. In terms of the prop cart and the prop ammo that's on the cart, it's manipulated, altered, kind of messy. And, you know, at this accidental shooting on a movie set, the police begin to make some mistakes. No one had ever investigated a prop gun on a movie set before. They recover the prop gun, but they don't wear gloves. They don't have the prop car inside the crime scene. Someone moves it onto the crime scene. People start touching it and showing, okay, this is a dummy, this is a blank. And then they make another mistake that matters in this case with some more significance, which is that they don't secure the prop truck that houses the cart. See, that cart that they roll off comes from a truck where all of the ammunition, all of the firearms are, and that's where they're stored. They don't secure the prop truck for several days. And then the prop house that supplies the truck, that supplies the cart, they don't secure for over a month. A lot of mistakes. They had never investigated a case in a movie set. But they had the prop gun. That was key. And so they needed to figure out where the live bullet came from. They had the shell casing, Starline brass. That's the sort of make. You'll hear that phrase, Starline brass. And the police were right to focus on that. That was the lethal element. And so they work outward. Makes good enough sense. Folks around the ammo and the gun to be interviewed at the precinct. The armorer at the precinct. She loaded the live bullet. Halls, head of safety, he double-checked. And Alec walks up to the police. You'll see this early today. And he says, I'm here, whatever you want to do, whatever you need me to do, just tell me where to go. And Sarah Zachary, the prop master who threw out the stuff at the cart, they missed her that night to bring to the precinct. But the rest of them at the precinct. And thankfully, we have the lapel cameras.
And then they cleared the gun outside after his request, and I witnessed them clear it and saw the bullets. Okay. So the one was the one that was missing, the one that fired, we don't know, but all the other ones were proper.
Oh, they objected?
I can pause this. I can turn this off. Move on.
They are definitely in the argument mode. This is not an opening anymore.
That was just a quick snapshot of the scene.
Let's approach her. This is.
Yeah, she's approaching again. They're in full argument mode.
They consented.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
They're arguing it up. Listen, I understand what you guys said earlier, but I think this is not, because we were talking, everything we were talking about earlier, finger being on the trigger, it's showing him, his fingers all on the trigger, he's pulling triggers, he's doing all this stuff. This is on a movie set. As a regular dumb person just watching this and saying, oh my God, it seems like, well, yeah, what he's saying makes sense. Fake actors, fake this, who the hell put, that's the person responsible. And I think that's what he put over to me. If I'm comparing what I've already heard to this guy's opening, I think he's killing it.
Really?
I think
wow, we couldn't disagree more on this one, man. Wow.
I agree with what Doobie is saying here, right? I mean, you should never have your audience thinking you're a liar. And if that's what some people in our audience are thinking, why would we assume that people in the jury are not thinking the same? Like, oh, you're an actor, you're special,
The
everything.
remaining
You're
witnesses from inside the church are interviewed on the scene. They're interviewed with lapel cameras. They're interviewed by the lead detective, Detective Cano. And those witnesses, some of them will come in here and testify. And not a single one of them will tell you anything different than what I'm about to tell you about the evidence. The gun was double checked, verified it was a cold gun, not an actor's responsibility to check. Safety was ensured before. Alec was doing his practicing, his rehearsing, his movements. People manipulate and point guns on movie sets. The gun went off during the rehearsal. No one saw him intentionally pull the trigger. It was obviously a tragic accident, but Alec committed no homicide. Alec took the gun from those charged with its safety. He did not tamper with it. He did not load it himself. He did not leave it unattended. It completed his costume and his character. It was an actor handling a prop and integrating it into the character of Harlan Rust. There was a dedicated professional there, off camera, whose sole sacred responsibility was that prop safety. And Dave Halls, the head of safety, was there by her side. Everyone relied on that. And it was tragic that they let them down. He was just acting as he has done for generations, and it was the safety apparatus that failed them all. So law enforcement continues. They need to find the live bullet. That was the lethal element. So they, led by Detective Cano, execute a search warrant on the church. And that's what law enforcement does. They immediately go to a judge. They say, this is what we need to do. They go into the church urgently before anything can be altered. They're confirming it was an accident, not a crime in the church. They search for guns and ammunition, videos and photos. There was no further answer in the church. They had the prop gun. They had all those witnesses secured. Their statements are clear. Alec had committed no crime, but the bullet was a mystery. And so they focus on the bullet, the critical lethal bullet, and how did it enter the movie set. So they had the prop cart, and then they go do the warrant on the prop truck. And so at that point, and I'm going to put up a photo so that you can see who some of these individuals are. They're trying to figure out when they go to the truck, what is the source of the lethal bullet? And so they execute a warrant on the truck approximately a week later. The Seth Kenny that you heard about in the prosecutor's opening, the supplier for the set, he's there. Sarah Zachary, the prop master, she's there. And they walk through what's inside of the prop truck with law enforcement. But there's no answer to the lethal bullet. And this case then takes on, all this pressure. The media begins swirling. Where is the lethal bullet? How did it get on that movie set? And what about that actor, Alec Baldwin, who had nothing to do with why the bullet got on the movie set? And so police and prosecutors, they work hand in hand, meeting after meeting, trying to find the lethal bullet, meeting with Seth Kenny, meeting with Sarah Zachary, the prop master, the supplier. Where is it? And about a month after the incident, Sarah Zachary finally sits down with law enforcement to answer some questions. And she explains to them that she threw away some stuff. She disposed of some stuff. And the prosecutors and police keep meeting, swirling media. And then at that point, they go to the last step, right? Done the cart, gone to the truck, met with Sarah Zachary, and they go execute a search warrant on, as the prosecutor told you, PDQ, the prop house. And again, Seth Kenny's there to greet them, let them in, and they don't find the lethal bullet. They never did. They never did. And as things roll into police and prosecutors, cell phones and photos and forensics, looking for this shiny object, they found another shiny object.
It's blood-covered shiny object.
Instead of trying to find the source of the lethal bullet, they focused on Mr. Baldwin. But Mr. Baldwin was like every other actor. He goes bang bang in movies. He's told when guns are cold or not. He rehearses and acts as his character. Safety proceeds before the actor. Once the actor has the prop gun, he can handle it however a person he's acting as would. A properly cleared gun can't hurt anybody. And so they told you about some of the things that Alex said in the statements that they will take or picked out a few lines from. But he won't tell you anything different, that he took a gun loaded and cleared by the armor and the AD. He made motions with the gun as he was rehearsing. He didn't intentionally pull the trigger. The gun just went off. And he does say, I didn't have a problem with the gun before. And this idea, that terrible. They said that he didn't want to check because he would offend them. In this moment, he's been doing this for 40 years, the evidence will show. And he has habits, and there are also SAG guidelines that tell actors what to do and what not to do. And the SAG guidelines don't tell actors to check the gun. You will see them. That's not the actor's role. And so I guess the point that they're trying to make is that why in this specific moment he doesn't break his habit of 40 years and check it differently and sort of consult them this one time. If he had done that and started playing with the gun in that way, they'd be saying, arrogant actor, why is he doing that? So they will play these statements, Alec's statements. You're going to hear a man in shock and grief, a father, an artist, worried about his family. You hear he's, on one of the calls, he's going to meet with the decedent's family, the Hutchins family, and he's upset about that. He will talk to law enforcement. He will call them. He doesn't need a lawyer. He didn't commit a crime. He will call them and offer to meet and speak over and over again. And ask anyone in the acting world. Actors know. Actors rely on armorers and point guns and shoot guns. The Armorers Act, what they did is clear and proven. The head of safety, you will learn, took responsibility for his verification failure. But Alec committed no homicide. So law enforcement didn't have a homicide case against Alec Baldwin, but they changed the question. You heard the prosecutor tell you about this. Did he pull the trigger? Did he pull the trigger? Did he intentionally pull the trigger? And if he did, of course, that would only make his statement incorrect, right? That would mean he would have misspoke, been incorrect. You know, and I want to stop for a moment and just tell you, because you're going to hear a lot of testimony, expert testimony, like the prosecutor told you, about the gun functioning imperfectly. Did he let the hammer down when he cocked it? Did he hit the trigger? Did he, in a calculated manner, as the prosecutor made a motion, you know, fire the gun like that? And when this issue is discussed, it's easy to sort of pull yourself into courtroom land and away from a movie set. On a movie set, you're allowed to pull the trigger. So even if he intentionally pulled the trigger like the prosecutor just demonstrated, that doesn't make him guilty of homicide. He did not know or have any reason to know that gun was loaded with a live bullet. That's the key. That live bullet is the key. That is the lethal element. But again, as the prosecutor told you, if they could prove that he intentionally pulled the trigger and he was imperfect, imprecise, wrong with what he said, then maybe you take that and you say he's lying. And if he's a liar, he committed homicide. And so what they do is they take the prop gun. They're blinded by the shine. They're blinded by trying to disprove Alec. They take it and they order a destructive test on the firearm. They order the FBI to take a test that they know will destroy the firearm. It's a pointless, unnecessary test where they blindly try to make this big case by taking a mallet and smashing the firearm. At the time that they did that, they knew that Alec had adamantly maintained, that he was manipulating the hammer and the gun just went off. That the witnesses said it went off out of nowhere. That there are these accidental discharges that happen on the set. That guns have issues in the real world. That this gun had a hair trigger. And the owner's manual of this specific gun actually says that if you load it with a live round or any round in the chamber, in that last position, and you drop it like you see a cowboy in a movie, this type of old cowboy gun can accidentally go off. I don't remember hearing anything about that. The evidence will show that. So rather than trying to answer the question of what happened, they proceed with the destructive test. They eliminate the one item, that could prove what Alex said and believed. They didn't offer him a chance to test the gun. They didn't take the gun apart before they broke it and destroyed it and look at its inner workings. They didn't turn on their videotape. They just destroyed it. Can't ever be tested in the same condition it was in that day. Won't ever allow Alec to show his truth. And the destruction of this gun that you will hear in this evidence is symbolic of this entire case. Because the officers will tell you at that point, they weren't really investigating anymore. They were trying to disprove Alec, to get Alec, to have this day.
What?
And so after the destruction of the firearm, they hired some expert witnesses you heard about to pick up the pieces.
He's the real victim here.
And the state retained Lucian Haig, an expert with over half a century of experience. And he will come into court and he will tell you he's never seen anything like this in his entire career. They conducted a pointless test, a test that would lead to inevitable destruction of the firearm. There were other correct tests that they could have done to prove whether or not it could have accidentally discharged. None of the experts can test the gun in the condition it was in on the day in question. Why? Not because of something that Alec Baldwin or the crew members of Rust did. They were all clear. The gun just went off. But because of something that law enforcement did. And they deprived him of that opportunity. However, Lucian Haig will tell you that in his analysis, he did find modification that he thought likely pre-existed the FBI testing. And what that modification means and how it impacted the gun is hard to perfectly know, of course. But it was a modification on an important part, the critical part of the firearm. And it was important enough for them to put into a report and to write a new opinion about. They felt this revelation had to be sent to prosecutors. And they maintained that position, that this modification was a matter of import for almost a year. And then a few weeks ago, before trial, they just took it back. They just took it back. You will get to see the circumstances of that take back. How far they would go for the shiny object. They never solved the question of the lethal bullet. They destroyed the gun, and all they were left with is Alec Baldwin and the movie they intend to put on. But because they never solved the lethal bullet, they eliminated the prop gun, there will not be one witness, not one shred of evidence in this trial that Alec knew or should have known the gun was loaded with a live round. So they can't prove their high-profile homicide case. So they will proceed to then here and now tell you about other things, other evidence that you will hear that has nothing to do with what happened in the church on October 21st. That the movie set as a whole was improper or anything, that they hired the wrong armorer, I think I heard in opening. The evidence will show that the armorer was hired by somebody else, trained by somebody else, had done gun scenes on Rust with somebody else before Alec even got there. She was the daughter and the apprentice of the most famous and well-respected armorer in Hollywood. And she had just left serving, being an armorer for Nicolas Cage on another Western. Then they'll come in and they'll say, but what about the movie guidelines? You heard about Mr. Jorgensen, the movie guidelines, that one of the protocols wasn't followed, or there was a set safety issue about something unrelated to this, like these movie guidelines on a set or the things of Navy SEALs and NASA.
What?
The guidelines were followed. They followed the safety guidelines. Actors don't check the weapons. Safety is ensured by dedicated personnel. So they will say, but there had been accidental discharges on the set, that guns had fired accidentally prior, not related to Alec, by the way. But again, that's the people we looked at. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's fault, Sarah Zachary's fault, perhaps, Dave Hall's faults, workplace issues. Some of them will end up, and you will hear the witnesses in this case, many of them have brought civil lawsuits. And you'll hear that, in those civil lawsuits, they're presenting evidence to try to meet a burden, not a criminal beyond a reasonable doubt homicide trial burden, but they're going to try to prove their cases in civil courts. And that's where faults and accidents are at worst 99% worked out. Not here. But you'll hear these members of the Rust crew come in here. They'll try to make sense of this for you. Some of them have sued. Some of them are in grief. Some of them are in grief and have sued. And part of this grief they feel, that everybody feels, is understandable. And what they will do is they will tell you, if only we had had a second armorer. One of them will say, if only Dave Halls had checked better. If only the camera hadn't been right there and Ms. Hutchins wasn't leaning over the camera. If only I myself did this. If only Alec did that. This is natural, their testimony. It's part of the human condition. It's part of grief.
Objection, Your Honor.
None of them knew.
Yes.
He's begging for these objections, though. Is when you start to color outside the lines, you're going to have an objection raised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he knows this is coming.
Yeah.
He already knew. He was already adjusting before they even called him up to sidebar.
Yep. I get what you're saying, though, Nate. It's his performance element, at least, is on point.
The witnesses, in their grief, will look for reasons to try to make sense of this tragedy. But again, none of them knew or should have known about the lethal bullet either. No one had any idea that it was on that set or in that gun. In that world, they were all in it together. And you will hear that none of this other stuff has anything to do with those two critical questions we started with. Why there was a live bullet on set, why the armorer placed it in the gun, and of course, why the head of safety failed to detect it. None of it speaks to whether Alec knew or should have known those things. He didn't. No one on that set did. It was not foreseeable. You will hear that word from the witnesses and from eventually the instructions. Foreseeable. This was anything other than foreseeable. And they must prove beyond any and all reasonable doubt that this was foreseeable. Total indifference to human life, that death might occur. He's an actor. He's an actor. But here we are at a homicide trial. And so they will pull witnesses, and witnesses will be cross-examined. They will push themselves to the edge of truth and beyond. These things about, Alec didn't notice this or Alec didn't notice that. I want to make sure that you're clear on something that the evidence will show. He had been filming on that set for a handful of days. The evidence will show he had just gotten there. It's not as if he had been there for months and months and noticed things and failed things, and he had just gotten there. You don't notice every little thing when you start at a new place and when you're in the character of Harlan Rust. But they will push forward, and they will have gaps in the evidence as well. Don't expect you to be hearing and for them to call the first AD head of safety. I don't know if you'll be hearing from the lead detective, Cannell, who investigated this case, the lead detective, or the sergeant that supervised him, Sergeant Zook. I don't think you'll hear from Mr. Schilling, who was the lead investigator for the prosecutors. And so as you hear this, you jurors can assess about that gap of evidence. And there's one thing that I can tell you will not hear also. You will not hear from an actor or an expert in acting. And so they will play the videotapes of Alec Baldwin, the actor, acting. They will show you perhaps over and over again him in shooting scenes, bad Alec shooting a gun the wrong way in a movie scene. They will try to get you to picture that and forget that this was a movie set in the first place. And you will see actors in a Western acting. And your mind might go to your favorite gun scene in your favorite movie. You may picture actors and actresses doing exactly what you see here. The other actors in Rust doing the same thing that Mr. Baldwin was doing. But when you come back from that moment, remember, this is a homicide trial. And you will see soon that the reason they play those videos of him over and over is because they don't have any evidence of actual homicide. And you will learn the truth. Not a day goes by when we don't wish Alec had saved your life. But never, the witnesses will tell you, in the history, is something that an actor has done. Intercepted a live bullet from a prop gun. No actor in history. No one could have imagined or expected an actor to do that. So just remember that truth. So when they cry out justice, justice is truth. This was an unspeakable tragedy. Alec Baldwin committed no crime. Thank you.
It literally happened in
what
the
we're going to do now
Provo.
is we're going to take our morning bathroom break. So
we are on a bathroom break. All right. So this seems like it's going to have to get hot real quick, real fast with some disagreements. Let's start. How do we like the defense opening? Even though it was more like a closing argument because he was really going into it. What do we think?
Yeah.
I thought this was better than the state's opening personally, but what I didn't like about it is their inability to commit to a defense. The defense that I like, that I think is very strong for them, is that he didn't have any reason to know there would be a live round in the gun. That is a strong argument. Attack it on the mental state element. The gun went off by itself. You don't need that if you already have this defense that you can set up, that he didn't have the required mental state. To me, it muddies the waters and it drags down what is a good defense, with what is to me a very bad one.
I agree, except as to the overall conclusion. They kept bouncing around on theory. It wasn't even so much that they had multiple theories, is that they kept switching in between theories. They talk about the idea that, he's not a safety professional, which I agree is the right theory. And basically in the next sentence, start talking about the investigation, then talk about the bullet, and then go back and forth. So there wasn't even like compartmentalization of the defenses. They were intersliced in a way that made it very difficult to understand any particular theory at any particular time. I found it personally worse than the prosecutions. It went way too long for me. I found it to be droning. I found it to be bland. I found it to fall flat. It certainly didn't have that performative aspect that I was hoping for. It felt confused, and I also didn't like the way it started. It's like, oh, these are the rules for firearm handling are the rules, except on the movie set. Those are not the rules. I'm like, dude, man, I'm not maybe the best way to frame the issue. Yeah. I don't know about that one.
Well, I don't know. I got to say, I totally disagree with Kurt, because I will give, I give some points. Obviously, this was way too long. I don't think this was commando rate. He started at the end. I'm like, my God, come on, wrap this thing up. We're here forever. My God. But I do think, if you're looking at it just on a performance basis, I think the defense performed better in terms of this. On the term of the legal aspect of it, I think the defense didn't really have a lot to work with. It's kind of like, yeah, he shot, because everything is there. He shot her, this, but now what are the reasons for it? And I think his machine gun approach was like, shoot at everything and pray something falls. That's exactly what we just witnessed here, right? The police did a bad investigation. He wasn't, blah, blah, blah. So they kind of put everything out there and just hope, because in other words, it's like, I just need one jaw to buy into one of these things. I got the conspiracy theories up the waste of police. Grab onto that. I got this person who says grab onto that. And I do think it was disconjointed. But at the end of the day, I think he touched on enough to make you think like, well, hold on. This is an actor playing pretend. And all these other 40 times, he's done it many times. Matter of fact, he did it the day before. He was doing the exact same thing. And the only reason why this was different was because someone else made the mistake. And that's what he kept pointing on. The second AD, the armorer, someone else made this mistake, and he's not liable. So I think in the overall theme, if you could just put it down to one common theme, I think that was the theme. All these other people were wrong. But Alec, in his role, in this role, was wrong. And SAG also has come out, because I'm assuming they're going to say that. SAG has also come out and said, yes, Alec was correct, and and this prosecution is wrong, and all that type of stuff. So I do think they're going to rely on all those professionals that we've been talking about to come over and say, yes, Alec Baldwin wasn't responsible for checking that gun, and I think that was his theme. So if you're talking about who do I think did a better job, I think the defense did a better job overall. But I still think at the end of the day, he didn't move me to say Alec is not guilty, but he moved me more than the prosecutor did. Go ahead, Joe. I know that was a long-winded.
Yeah, you were as long as he was. Come on. All right, my take on it is hated it. I'm sorry. I somehow dislike Alec more now than I did before he started. That's like that's a fail. That's a fail. It's like Helena Hutchins is dead. The biggest victim here is Alec Baldwin. It's almost like Alec himself wrote this ridiculous opening. I hated this thing. I don't like him now. I mean whatever. My intensity of dislike for him has only increased. This person's at fault. He's at fault. She's at fault. Everyone's at fault. The police are coming after my guy. He's a complete victim here. He has different special rules. He has different rules than you because he's SAG. SAG says that you don't have to follow basic standard safety protocols that every other gun owner has to follow. He's special. So don't hold him to that yardstick. This is not at all his fault. I mean, it went off by itself. It could have fallen on her, and then she would have dropped dead. Everything here was just, to me, it was so pointing fingers, and he's a victim, and just what he should have done, what I would have thought he was going to do, is you basically should have hammered the distinction between civil accident and criminal accident, and basically hammer on the fact he touched on it in certain ways by saying he didn't know about the bullet in there or whatever. Hammer on the fact that this was a terrible, terrible, tragic accident, and Alec has spent countless sleepless nights crying over this and feeling that in some way that he was involved in this accident. But this, from the moment he got the gun, this is a terrible accident. There are other people who did terrible things that they have been held accountable properly, like Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and these other folks who brought the bullets on set. But from the moment it comes into his hands, this is a terrible accident. We all live in a world where we expect that certain things are going to operate based on how they always have been operating. Alec has been operating in a world where he never is checking guns. That's the way all actors work in this world. So for him to be checking a gun at that point is just not something that anyone would expect to happen. For him to expect that when he's told cold gun, that's something reliable, that's normal. That's normal life for him. It's not normal life for most people handling a gun, but that's normal life for an actor. Instead of portraying it that this is SAG saying he has special rules, you want to hound on the fact that this is a terrible accident. He feels awful about the fact they had any involvement or any role in this at all, but this is not a crime. There's no willfulness here. And that's how you sort of draw that distinction and hammer on that over and over again and force the state to establish this criminal level of culpability of reckless disregard. I think that's how I would handle it, which I think is.
I think I agree. I think I agree with you. It would have been nice if we stayed on theme. That would have been great.
Yeah. No, but he touched all that though. I like, don't get me wrong. I do understand the pushback, but I think he did hammer those things. Essentially, Joe's saying because he enacted special rules, and he specifically said, no, we're on a movie set. We're all playing pretend, and he's an actor playing pretend on a movie set, and these people don't check the guns. That I think is an important part. It's just not he's just some special actor. He's above the rules. Like in this particular context, yes, there are different operating procedures than in real life. So I think that context means something.
I agree with Nate on that point. It's sort of like he's trying to make it a little bit more relatable to the jury, saying basically, look, just like you driving your car is something you do every day, and yes, it can be lethal. You're not a mechanic. You're not going to go check under the hood every single time you get in the back seat. There are certain assumptions and risk assumptions that we make in our everyday life. Alec Baldwin, as an actor, similarly, had certain assumptions he had to make every single time he went on set and handled guns. And SAG doesn't outline certain safety procedures, and it doesn't require that he be extra or overly cautious as compared to the people whose job it is who failed at that job. So I think he did a good job there. I think the problem he's going to have at the end of the day is that they're going to call him a liar, because when he's sitting there saying, oh, well, this has never happened, a cold gun has never killed anyone, that's patently false. That happened in The Crow. And during the motions in limine, one of them was, we're going to exclude any evidence or discussion about The Crow, but it is allowed in if They are allowed to say one thing. This is what the judge said. The only testimony that they'll hear is blanks can also kill. So if you're hearing blanks can also kill, but you have on opening's defense, oh yeah, by the way, no one has ever been killed by a cold gun. There was no way he could have anticipated it. It's bullshit. To say that he was unaware or that he wasn't trained is bullcrap. The way that he's framed it has really set him up for failure, in my mind, once the testimony and once all the facts come out.
And that's a great point. Danny, you're making a great point, because there are interviews where Alex says things that basically imply that everything that the state just said is the defense just said is garbage. For example, he claimed in an interview, I think with Stephanopoulos on ABC, that he basically was saying that for the first hour after she was shot, he didn't know a bullet went off, that he thought that she fainted. Now we have his lawyer getting up there and saying that we all thought that there was this, everyone was like, oh my God, how did a bullet go off right when it happened? And Alec is, all worried about the bullet. So they're going to play that, and you're going to basically see that what the defense just said is hot garbage. I'm sorry, I really didn't like it. You're right that on the facts, Nate. I just think that everything about his job here is the framing. And you're right, as far as the facts that he got out, any lawyer would get the facts out. The framing is the key element which distinguishes between making the jury sympathetic or despise you. And I think that there was way too much opening here for them to dislike him more.
Let's not switch the burden of proof here, though. He doesn't have to prove anything. He's trying to knock down everything that they're saying. Now,
that's the law. That's not court of public opinion, which the jury tends to go with that.
But I'm saying is that if you're just talking about a technical matter, he wasn't trying to prove anything. He's just trying to say, hey, or even the proof that they have is not good enough for this particular case, and doesn't prove that he actually did anything wrong. So, I get that we want them to because it's like the motive issue. Like, we always want to prove motive, but you really don't have to prove motive. I think that's kind of what you're running up to here. But again, I don't think this has moved the jury to not guilty or guilty, but I do think the defense did a better job than the prosecutor, even though I know Uncivil's going to kill me now for saying that again.
I think you're talking about the energy and the performance when you say he's doing better. Is that what you're talking about? Because in terms of structure and what was actually said and the actual content, I think that the prosecution blew this out of the water just in terms of that alone. Now, performance-wise, she fell flat, but I mean, that's kind of her personality. That's how she delivers arguments.
I think in two stages. I think performance, I think the defense did. I think in substance, I do agree with the prosecution, but I don't think the defense just dropped the ball on that. I think what happens is that in that performance, they went too long. There's points that they could have just hit that was clear, right? And we know the theme. And I do agree with Uncivil and Joe, where it was the structure of it wasn't as clean as the prosecution structure. Prosecution was easy to follow. This, even though it was a great performance, it was a little harder to follow because he was shooting at so many stuff. And I think the objections did hurt because he was going into argument and being forced to be stopped and then restart and then try. It's going to hurt the flow a little bit. So I think, unfortunately, and we all agree, it was too long. So I think if you put everything together, you maybe have a wash, but I would still pitch it for the defense. I would say they had a better opening, but that it doesn't really change the going into trial.
I totally see that. Yep. And the burden is higher on the prosecution. They need to be able to prove he's guilty from the outset. So I agree with you. You changed my mind.
All right. You see?
Magic.
So what do you think everybody else is saying? So right now we're going in. The jurors. How do you think our jurors feel about what they've just heard? Because we're still on the 5-minute break. What do you guys think?
I feel like the thing that the jurors are going to notice is that the state has told me that they violated all of the safety guidelines, and the defense has told me they followed all of the safety guidelines. And so one of these people is not correct. To me, this is going to be a pretty critical fact to be developed in the evidence. So that's what I'm going to be focused on when it comes out.
Yeah, because I always have this fear that since I'm an attorney, and I'm looking at this trial, I'm looking at it as an attorney, and just the normal, like that happened with us with Kim Potter. We're all looking at it like, how could this be? But then the jury comes out in a different way, because I think, and I'm hoping I'm not doing this here, where I'm looking as an attorney, I'm like, I don't see how he's not guilty. It's guilty, he's guilty, but I think when you start talking about what's reasonable for an actor playing pretend, and I think that's what the defense wants us to look at him as. Not Alec Baldwin, the multi-millionaire actor, but just as a dumb actor who knows nothing about guns, who somebody hands him a gun and says it's pointing and shooting at this person. Boom. Is it my fault? Oof. Well, we have who does anybody know who the first witnesses are? Because I'm looking at the trial. There's law and crime still going on about their coverage.
And so I've often thought to myself,
Okay.
Oh.
Did you catch up? Did you catch up, Nate, to make sure that they were there at? Okay.
Yeah, so
he's the only person who can explain those differences.
Okay, I'm gonna play. Hold on, I gotta find another. Matter of fact,
you should silence it. Can you silence it so we don't hear it?
Maybe he does.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let me silence it. Uncivil, can you or somebody else? Can somebody else find another feed?
I'm just saying, make sure you're at live, not 3 minutes behind.
Yeah, I am live. I'm live on the feed, but can somebody else pull up the feed and share the feed, because my internet is being choppy here, so I don't want to have my feed and then it goes out. They're like, oh my God, what happened?
Another point that really pissed me off was, and I'm sorry, this actually pissed me off, is when he said, oh, well, he showed up to the set. He had only been on set for 3 or 4 days. He didn't really have a full picture of what was going on. Dude, you literally met with the crew the night before. They all went out to dinner. They sent you letters. You're telling me that you had no idea that everybody had just walked off set because of a lack of safety standards? I'm sorry, but to pretend like he was somehow an innocent bystander, he just walked into this. He had no clue. How could he have known? It's just not going to play well at the end of the day. And that's where I say, at the end of the day, I think this argument will backfire. Forgive the pun, but it is. I mean, that's what's going to happen, is everybody's going to call him a liar, if anybody remembers this. So, sorry, it's just really upsetting to me. That point in particular really got to me, and I'm not entirely sure why.
Yeah, I do think that the one of the worst parts about this was trying to make Alec Baldwin look like some regular guy. Like, oh, this is some regular. I think that was bad, because he's no regular guy, right? He's not. But I do think you have to frame it in the sense of
he's a regular guy who has different special rules because he's part of SAG.
Yeah, that's how it came off.
Yeah.
But I felt it was like, because he kept mentioning it on a movie set, and I think if he coached it in that way and put that type of context, I think it makes it better, because he's an actor on a movie set playing pretend. Now he's a dumb millionaire actor on a movie set versus just some dummy who knows nothing, which I think is a whole different thing. Oh, we got Viva.
Viva! Who's trying to add him?
Viva!
You're muted.
Welcome.
Viva is muted.
Is that the good mic? Hold on, let me see.
Very good.
How do I stream to location?
Hit restream.
Where do you
in the upper right?
Upper right.
Someone's going to have to drop out a stream, though. Danny, I think you're going to have to drop out one of the streams, so there's a slot.
Oh, no, well, don't worry about that.
No, there's enough slots.
No, and I was going to say, don't worry about it, because I don't want the pressure. I might be ducking out and doing my own stream, but not on Alec Baldwin. Good. Hold on a second.
No, there's actually enough now.
Here we go. Okay. What's up, everybody?
Hey.
Okay. How's everyone doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. I think I've heard what everyone thought about the opening statements. Is there going to be evidence adduced that Baldwin knew that there were live rounds on the set when he was saying he was walking around shooting the gun? Is there evidence? I thought I remembered there being evidence that there were live rounds on the set and Baldwin knew about it.
There were emails sent. I think there was an email that was sent, which was making multiple complaints, and one of them was, I'm fairly certain, were complaints about it being too hazardous. I don't know if it specifically said live rounds. I have to look at the email again. But there definitely was mention about gun safety specifically. So but I remember seeing that in an email that was sent to him prior to the shooting. But
now, I will say this. So this prosecutor, this prosecutor, said they were going to throw us in jail because so there was this rumor going around on set that Hannah Gutierrez Reed in the mornings was doing something called planking, where they put things up in their
She's
shoe.
planking.
Yeah, planking. And that's essentially you're taking your gun and shooting things in the morning. And they had assumed, because everybody's saying there should be no live rounds on the set, they were assuming that Alec Baldwin knew that. So somebody who I was representing was essentially getting called to give testimony, but they were subpoenaing us, and we fought the subpoena. But essentially, and that was in the news, that a lot of those issues of planking Alec would have known that, hey, if this is going on, then they're alive, and then you'd have to be more. So I'm not sure if that's going to come out here, but that's allegedly, that was the rumor going around set, because they were doing this in the morning. They were obviously live round, and that's how people, a couple of the investigators thought that's how the live round may have gotten in the gun, because they were planking, and then.
What does plinking mean?
Plinking, like shooting
Shooting
playing around with the
cans
gun,
and
shooting
stuff.
cans with a gun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Gallon jugs that you fill with water and you blast them. You know, it's fun stuff.
Okay, I'm looking to see how it is I can go stream on my stuff here. Do I go and add a destination?
Yes.
You can, yes, you can add a destination, and it should set you up.
Okay, so let's say, oh, I see what's going on there. Okay, I'll figure this out. Yeah, so the first of all, the lawyer there is making, or at least it's not evidence, but making claims as to what Alec Baldwin said without Alec Baldwin having testified yet, or if ever, about his immediate reaction after the shooting.
Yeah, in his interview, he claimed that for like the first for the first, like, I don't know, 30, 60, 90 minutes, he didn't even realize that she was shot. He thought she fainted. That's what he told an interviewer. Now, and that's all admissible. Those are all admissions again. Those are all admissions from the defendant. They can bring that in. It's not going to be a hearsay problem. So, and that's, directly refuting everything the state is saying with respect to, his reaction afterwards. It's just, I mean, it may only come in if it's deemed relevant. It's perhaps if he takes the stand and tries establishing, what happened to verify anything that the defense just said in their opening. But yeah, there was so much that I just was very bothered by this whole thing.
What did you guys think about them playing the part of the Rust movie? I'll tell you right off the bat. This did not land for me at all. The impression that I got is he's trying to make this argument of like, oh my gosh, look at this art you'll miss out on if we don't let actors go and treat handguns like they're toys on movie sets. Whatever will you do without Hollywood movies of guns being pointed at other people going pew pew? Like, if this is the trade-off we're supposed to consider and accept, I accept that. I will happily live my life without the Rust movie if it means that the cinematographer is still alive. Terrible,
not even that.
Terrible setup, I think.
It doesn't even mean that you have to live without the fruits of the art. It just means you have to use actual fake guns or actual non-functional as opposed to the real firearms that are props because you want it to look realistic. So,
but that was the argument, Ziva. That was the argument. The argument the defense was making was we want to look as real as possible, use fake guns, hire these people to make sure the guns are fake, hire the armor to make sure everything is good. And at the end of the day, those people failed us because they hand the actor a gun and say, go act. They don't say check the gun. They say go act. And he went and acted and somebody died. I
was just going to say, like, in terms of the alternative not having movies, but rather just having them with a little fake gun. But they're going to have a big problem. The closing arguments, the opening statement of of Baldwin's attorney, some of Alec Baldwin's own out-of-court statements that he made in the interviews contradict the argument that they're raising. So he's setting himself up for a massive blowback when the prosecution goes to pull up Alec Baldwin's statements with Stephanopoulos on the roadside of Vermont, where he says, yeah, I know never to point a gun at a person, but he did it. I knew never to pull the trigger back, but he did it, although he didn't, pull it all the way. So the lawyer made arguments that Baldwin himself has already contradicted in out-of-court statements that I don't think they need Baldwin as a witness to present.
No, they don't.
He did make one point about the pulling of the trigger. He said he essentially said it didn't matter. He's like, if you pull the trigger, if he didn't, don't forget this is supposed. And that was the thing that Danny took exception in when he started saying, "What's a cold gun?" and cold guns never hurt anybody. And then Danny said, "The crow." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's true." I was thinking about that too. So I think he tried to hedge his bet on that by saying, even if he did pull the trigger, what does it matter? Because we're going to hear a lot of evidence about him pulling that trigger. I assume.
Well, and also, I could hear Grobert screaming across the continent. A cold gun means a gun that he said something beyond it not having live rounds in it, that it couldn't possibly hurt anybody unless it fell on their foot. A cold gun is still a real gun, but either not loaded, and I don't think he's right about it only being loaded with dummy rounds. So the idea that a real gun it should be regarded as something that could never, ever hurt somebody is a stupid argument to make in the first place, even if they call it cold.
Yeah,
Well,
think in
they're
that
trying
context,
to make the argument to foreseeability, right? And I do understand that. I think it's one of the strongest arguments that they have, and maybe, you know, the one that they should be leaning on the hardest. It's just that the whole problem is that it's always foreseeable that there can be a mix-up, and so with the magnitude of harm that can result from mishandling something like a gun, that is why you have the safety rule of you assume that every gun is loaded, even if you don't think it is because you don't remember putting the bullet in or whatever. Things can happen that you just aren't aware of, and so it's just running contrary to that basic safety premise that I think the state is gonna hammer on, and probably quite effectively, because that is reflected in the SAG guidelines. You must treat it like it's loaded,
especially in the context of the knowledge that he had. This is why I say his position as an executive, as a producer, is relevant, because his normal operating procedure should not have been the yardstick that he was employing that day, given his state of mind that he had knowledge that guns had gone off in the prior few days. And that's why he's saying, like, well, this is how he always operated. Really, is that how you always operate, when you know that people are firing off guns without realizing it on this set? Is that normal? I mean, is it normal that you hear about that when you're doing this the movie The Departed? Did you have complaints about that you're following the same guidelines in this situation where it's an independent film? There's a lot less perhaps professionalism, a lot less experience from the people who are involved here, and there's been problems. I'm sorry, I don't think that yardstick is a fair yardstick to hold him to.
His lawyer did say that Baldwin that morning was going around doing test scenes and firing the gun. He means blanks, right? Or dummy.
When he's saying cold gun, I think he's saying there are no blanks in it.
Normally, no blanks. Cold gun means nothing's in there.
No, but I understood him. I understood him saying that. It was during the what's not security, but the training, the safety training. And he said Baldwin, was asking to be video recorded and was shooting the gun. It was ambiguous when he said that as to whether or not he was shooting the gun with blanks, or dummy rounds, or with plinking real rounds as he's learning to use it. I tell you, if it turns out that Baldwin at any point, and the evidence comes in that he had fired a live round on that set, his goose is cooked, and I think it's already cooked as it is.
I think we know he did. Didn't we?
I don't know, because that lawyer, says it, but then says he had no reason to believe there'd be live rounds on the set. They should never be there. But if it turns out Baldwin was firing them, he's screwed.
Yes, because that was the whole catalyst of the whole defense. On the set, and just so everybody understands, it's on this movie set, there were supposed to be no live rounds at all, period. So the fact that there was a live round is the problem. But so day 1, day 30, it was never supposed to be a live round on the set. Now, how the live rounds got there, that's the whole issue. So Baldwin's defense essentially is, I'm on the set with a real gun, but there's never supposed to be a live round. And just to make sure, we have armor checking, AD checking, they give me the gun and say cold. So there's no blanks, no nothing. It's got nothing. And I do my thing. So I think if you put it in that context, it's just hard for me to say, how could you foresee something like this would happen? Or how could Alec have foreseen something like this to happen under these conditions? Because that's what the argument is, under the conditions that he was in.
I think the foreseeability goes directly to his role in hiring and firing. How much did he know was going on set beforehand when he got on set? Because he knew that there were misfires going on. That's something that the crew explicitly told him. And I think that's part of the problem. And this is why I don't like dumping the whole producer argument altogether. Now, I understand why they did it. For anybody who didn't watch the pretrial, go watch all of our streams on the pretrial motions, but they discuss it pretty clearly there. If we get into what he actually was in charge of and what he wasn't, it will devolve into an entirely separate trial because it's not explicitly outlined in his contract. But what we do know is that he was aware that there was a heightened risk as compared to his other productions he was on when he showed up on set that day.
Well, it's funny though. Where the safety training occurred, if it turns out that there were live rounds, and he might argue that the live rounds weren't on set and that he had a safety training somewhere else off set, so that he had no reason to believe there'd be live rounds on the set. The bottom line, my only bottom line, is listening to that opening statement. If it turns out that Baldwin had ever fired one live round in the context of that movie, on or off the set, if he went to a range, then the opening statements become demonstrably false and outright misleading, and I'd expect them to hammer that. But he's gonna, if he fired a live round at any point, he's really, really in big trouble, especially from what they tried to make by way of opening statement.
Yeah, I think this is gonna. I think this is gonna, because this really is a single issue case. It's about foreseeability. Would a reasonable person in his position be able to foresee that he should have checked that gun? And I think you have a hell of an argument to say both yes, and I think you have a hell of an argument to say no.
I would flip that around a little bit and say not whether he had the foreseeability to check the gun. That might be a bit of, to check the rounds. That might be a bit of a higher burden in terms of what his obligations were. Foreseeability not to point a real gun at a person, period.
And
he
pull
said
the
he knew,
trigger.
and he said he knew not to do it. So live rounds or not, because I don't think it should be his responsibility to go check each and every live round. I'm sort of persuaded by that aspect of the argument. But you don't point the gun at a person. He knew that you don't do it. He said you never do it. He said he would never do it. No. And then he did it. And that's why you don't do it, because you don't know what's in the gun. So if I'm the prosecution, I shift the argument a little bit. Asking him to check each one of the rounds is a little bit more onerous and less reasonable than saying you don't point it at a person because you don't know what's in the rounds.
I think the challenge here is that what is going to be safe and foreseeable under the circumstances depends very much on what everybody is expecting the circumstances to be. If your script is calling for one set of action that isn't going to require the gun to be pointed at a person, then your safety standards can be somewhat more relaxed compared to if you are going to have to actually be pointing the gun at a person. And then that again compared to if you were going to be pointing the gun at a person and cocking the hammer. And then again, if you're going to be pointing at a person, cocking the hammer and pulling the trigger, because each one of these separate facts increases the risk to everybody else that's on that set as the result of this action. So to me, I think a very critical point is going to come down to what was he actually supposed to be doing with the gun in that situation, because you can't pass the blame onto the safety people if you were acting in a way that the safety people would not have foreseen.
What did you guys think of the he was a Wild West sheriff at that moment, and he was doing, where they're trying to put him in the mind of the actor. What were your thoughts on that?
I like I understand. I like the part because they're trying to say, and at that role, he's playing a role. So he's pointing a gun and he's doing everything. And that's dangerous in a real world example. What he was doing would be dangerous. But in this example, because he was playing in this role and everything was supposed to be, it wasn't dangerous. So I did like the analogy, but I think the failing part of it is that he tried to make Alec Baldwin, he tried to make him too much into the victim instead of saying this was an accident. And I think that's the part I had the issue with, right? He's not a victim. This was an accident, but then portray it as an accident. Don't you make him seem like a victim.
Who was thoroughly unimpressed with the way he pulled out the gun? I think I can do it better.
When it happened, what the hell was that?
I don't know if you guys watch a guy named Daniel Thrasher on YouTube.
Call your first witness.
And he's got some fun stuff. Like that's how he pulls out a gun.
Nicholas LeFleur.
Nicholas LeFleur, the flower in French.
Sir,
LeFleur.
Golly.
No, I'm going to try to shut up. It's hard for me, but I'm going to try to shut up.
Will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. All right, have a seat. Talk into the microphone.
He'll tell us.
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Okay, based on the pin on his tie, he looks like law enforcement.
Invocation of the rule, our case agent is in the room. We just wanted to put that on the record.
You have volume louder?
Prosecutor
Yeah, sure.
indicated that they'd be calling the case agent early in the case. So given that, I did not continue my objection I had earlier to her being present. Thank you.
Case agents allowed in.
Is that loud enough?
Maybe a little
Louder.
Yeah.
Louder than that?
State your name and spell your last name
Good.
for the court record, please.
My name is Nicholas LeFleur. My last name is spelled LeFleur.
And how are you currently employed?
The City of Santa Fe Police Department.
And what do you do there?
Police officer.
How long have you been employed at the city of Santa Fe? Can everyone hear
No,
Officer LeFleur? Okay. And prior to working for the Santa Fe Police Department, did you work anywhere else?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you work?
The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department.
And how long did you work at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department?
About 2 years.
And were you on duty on October 21st of 2021?
Yes.
Did you receive a dispatch call?
Yes.
Can you tell us what you received and what you did?
A call came in that there was someone shot at a movie set. Unclear who shot, how many were shot. I happened to be the closest person to the call and arrived on scene first.
So when you arrived on scene, when you say first, were there other law enforcement officers there?
No, not at the time when I got there.
Were there any other first responders present?
There was some fire personnel and what they called the scene medic for the movie set, I guess.
You said a scene medic?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you, let me ask you, when you receive a call for a shooting, what's your primary concern?
Priority life.
And what do you
And
mean
to
when
make
you said priority life?
Make sure whoever needs help gets help and that the threat is stopped.
And when you arrived on the scene, and where was it?
Bonanza Creek movie set, I guess. It's quite a ways off the interstate.
Okay. And what county and state is that in?
Santa Fe County, state of Mexico.
Okay. So when you arrived there, give us an idea of what you saw. What was going on?
It was a big, old, like cowboy western theme, like city or town.
Okay, get
There's a
this
bunch
guy
of
some
people
coffee.
running everywhere. Bunch of cars. Bunch of people pointing. When I got there, people were pointing towards a church. And I got out. And I attempted to grab my medical bag and went in and saw.
Hang on, I'm gonna stop you there. Approximately how many people were there on scene?
I don't have the direct number, but there was more than 100 people.
Have you ever been called to a shooting where there were 100 people already on scene?
No.
Did that present any specific challenges for you?
Yes.
Explain to us what those challenges were.
Just there's a lot of moving parts. Just got to take it one piece at a time. See who's hurt. Make sure that one, that nobody's continually getting hurt, and then two, the person who's hurt, medical attention is being given to them, and then go from there.
Okay. And when you arrived on scene that day, were you running your body-worn camera?
Yes.
The state moves for the admission of State's Exhibit 4.
No further objections, Your Honor.
Are they going to show us some body cam footage here?
I want to just make sure I'm connected. I'm ready to play it.
He seems
May-
so shy
permission to publish?
this go around. I feel like he was a little more assertive last time.
Yes, Your Honor, we've consented to both lapel videos today.
That's fine. So you may publish, this is stage one?
LeFleur.
Stage four.
How do I get the monitors to come on?
Brian's going to do it.
Okay.
You know how to do it? Go ahead, do it.
I'm kind of light, so can we be quiet, please?
All right.
your monitors on?
This one's not. It's on, but it's green light.
Green light's on.
Now people are getting a real flavor for what the practice of law
Where
is.
do you want?
Watching
Sure, if the
technical
monitor won't
glitches.
just come on.
He's got to get the adapter. Go get the adapter.
Okay. Officer LeFleur, do you want to turn around and just look at the monitor on the wall behind you?
It doesn't matter, man.
Okay, let's do that.
You got your timer kit? Yeah, I'm trying to get it out. Stupid new truck. Are we inside with the PDMs?
Officer LeFleur, tell us what's going on in the video right now.
I'm looking for my other medic bag. I handed the individual a trauma pack for shooting, and I'm attempting to open one of the storage boxes in the back of the truck.
Who was the individual that you handed something to?
I believe it was a fire personnel that I followed in, a volunteer firefighter maybe.
And I thought I heard the word, is it BVM?
It's for CPR. It's a bag valve mask.
Bag valve mask.
BVM.
Okay, thank you.
We need where you at? A seal. You have a seal? A seal? Seal. I got a sterile glove and a packing gloves. Okay. Over there? Yep. Yeah. My hand is on it. Talking. We're gonna get you up in Bruce, you shot her? She came in here and went across her chest. And came out the back and then it's you want air flight? Yeah, we got one in route. Okay.
And what are you talking about there when you say air flight?
Helicopter that's designed to transport people that need advanced treatment faster than an ambulance. It's a helicopter that air paramedics basically.
Did you call for the helicopter or did someone else do that? Do you know?
That individual said that they had already called one, but I called one for one as well.
You called also?
Yes, ma'am.
And why did you feel that it was necessary to have a helicopter arrive?
Someone who was shot across the chest. We're quite a ways out for an ambulance in reference to where the hospital is. So.
And when you say you were quite a ways out, how far away is Bonanza Creek?
From a hospital?
Sure.
Running lights and sirens, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or more.
Okay.
.32 Santa Fe, one female shot in the chest, male shot in the stomach, requesting air flight.
Requesting air flight.
I heard you there say male shot in the stomach. Is that what you said?
I'm not sure. I didn't really hear it.
Well, as you sit here today, do you recall where the other person was shot?
Somewhere in the chest
Okay,
or shoulder area.
thank you.
GPS forward.
It's okay.
I got you right here.
2432, how many people you have seen there?
32, I got just identified medics.
In your video, sir, can you identify who the set medic is?
It's a little blurry, but I believe it's this lady, right? The one that's bent over with her blondish brown hair.
Is the monitor working now?
Yeah. Yes. This monitor is working now.
Oh, it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know how to touch it to put it? There you go. Thank you. I appreciate you. You can go ahead and remove that.
Oh, I don't know how to remove it.
Can you show them how to remove it?
Oh, push on the menu button. There's a clear view.
Okay.
And if it's in the way, just push menu.
Do you know who these other people are that are in the room?
No, I know that that person, and somebody over here, the battalion chief, they were wearing Santa Fe medic, county fire medic shirts. So, and they came in the vehicle in front of me.
You don't know who the other people are that are in the room?
I know the other person shot, and then Elena Hutchins, or I didn't maybe misspelled her name or pronounced it, and then the other assistant director, and that's about it.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was a truck pulling in ahead of you.
It was a volunteer firefighter truck.
So did the first responders that we see here in this scene, did they arrive about the same time you did?
Yes.
.32 Santa Fe Bolt, approximately 140 pounds, elderly male and young female. What do you need me here? No. You want a BBM?
He's good. He's got a broken shoulder. This is repeat your information. Flying around. Yeah, she'll be fine. All right.
Officer LeFleur, tell us what you're doing now and why.
I looked over and seen that they were getting the oxygen tank out. Noticed that they were using on a bag valve mask, which was more appropriate for that situation than the one that goes around their face. I'm just helping them, doing as much as I can to help.
So give us a little bit more information. What causes you to believe that the bag valve mask is more appropriate than the one that goes around your face? And when you say the one that goes around your face, what do you mean?
If the oxygen were to run out or they had to use manual breaths, they could use the bag. The other one is just something that's over their face.
Okay. And what made you think that the bag valve mask was more appropriate?
What are they trying to get at with this? Exactly.
Nothing really. I just believe it's more, I don't know.
Officer LeFleur, are you trained in life-saving measures?
To an extent, yes.
Okay. Was it anything about your training that caused you to think that that would be more appropriate?
It's just what we've been trained with versus the one that was already on her.
Okay.
Gabby, can you just make sure nobody else comes in?
Yeah, we got air. Do you have ears, ma'am? Do you have stethoscope?
Yes, they're in that bag. Right there at the top. Purple? Nope, at the top. Helena.
Is anybody allowed to go with her in the helicopter? No.
Helena, deep breath. Deep breath, Helena. There you go. Deep breath. Deep breath, Helena. Deep breath.
Be okay. Good girl. Good girl.
There you go. Good girl. Deep breath. Entrance is here. Exit's back here.
Okay. You guys pack it?
No.
What do you guys need?
I just need another dog tag.
Dog tag?
Something for pressure. I take a big one.
This one?
No, this one's just.
This one?
No. Ab pad. Do you have an ab pad?
Underneath the
Yeah.
shoulder blade, people's hospital area coming through.
All right, thank you. I just need something big. Thank you.
You got a stretcher?
Not me here, no.
Okay. Let me help him get the stretcher. Stretcher.
What are you doing now?
Just trying to stay busy, help clear the way for the stretcher. The ambulance is here.
Here's priority number 1. Okay.
Let's start clearing all this stuff out of here. Get everybody in here and get it out.
All right, yeah, we got air flight en route.
Not on me here. We can get it from the name. Helena?
Helena? This is Helena Hutchinson.
What side?
Okay. So I got the air. Thank you. Get all that up. I'm not behind you guys. All right, so we're gonna need to get going right away.
Officer LeFleur, have additional first responders now arrived?
Yes.
Can you give us an idea of who's on set assisting now?
So it looks like more paramedics have arrived, and Lieutenant Benavides is right there.
Okay, and do you mean this gentleman here?
Yes, ma'am.
That my cursor's on? And who was Lieutenant Benavides?
He was our day shift lieutenant at the time.
Was he a supervisor?
Yes, ma'am.
We got a through and through on her. We went through and through on her through the chest, and then you got one in the arm over there.
Everybody stops what they're doing right now. This is a crime scene. Okay, everybody stop.
Whose voice is that we're hearing?
Lieutenant Benavides.
Okay, roll it back. Roll over to the other side. See? Underneath, pull. Really good. Strap it down, let it go there. Okay? You keep your eyes on him, keep looking at me. All right, we got some stairs, guys. Couple stairs, the first step.
So what is your understanding about where Ms. Hutchins is being taken now?
Into the back of the ambulance.
And can you explain why is she going into the back of an ambulance rather than the helicopter?
The helicopter hasn't arrived yet. And my understanding is that they have additional medicines and equipment and measures they can take inside of an ambulance.
All right, thank you.
Disconnect here. You got it? Hey, can you take over that? You guys want to see Vincent? 32 Santa Fe, what's ETA on the bird?
What did you just say?
I asked the ETA on the helicopter,
And who are you speaking to?
Santa Fe dispatch.
Do you recall how they responded?
It's been a minute since I watched this video, so.
All right.
Oh, we got the bird right here.
Is the helicopter now arriving?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you doing now?
Appears I'm grabbing crime scene tape.
Why are you grabbing crime scene tape?
It's a crime scene.
To start the crime scene. I don't know if anybody had told me to grab the tape yet, but I knew we needed to start one.
You felt that you needed to put up crime scene tape.
Yes, ma'am. Or somebody may have asked for it.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Or somebody may have asked me for it. I'm just not too sure.
Okay. And what's crime scene tape used for?
That's what she really
Mark the
wanted.
perimeter or the inner perimeter of essentially a crime scene which they want to tape off and only allow certain people in and out.
Okay. And was that an issue in this scene?
The crime scene?
Well, cordoning off the crime scene, was that an issue here?
Yeah, it was a unique situation because of the you can't really tie crime scene tape to nothing. So I think in one point they actually used our patrol units as to tie the tape around and go to the next one.
And why is it important to cordon that off?
Just for evidence purposes, allow only certain people in and out because at this point we didn't know what was going on. So
preserve the scene.
And were there people in that area that were not first responders?
Yes.
Approximately how many, if you recall?
I don't know. Couldn't give you a number really. There was just a lot of people on the outside that I hadn't seen originally inside the church. So.
Okay, and did you know who those people were?
No.
Okay.
Busy.
Do you see this person here in the gray shirt?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that a first responder?
No.
So when the crime scene tape goes up, what happens to that person?
I can't recall. I haven't watched the video yet.
Hypothetically, is that person allowed to stay inside the crime scene?
No.
Okay. Who are the people that are allowed to stay inside the tape?
Medical and for first responders.
Okay.
We need Chief. I'm radio in for my
was in the middle of a shot, and I have live ordnance on the ceiling up there. It's safe.
Okay.
But it is here, right above here.
Okay.
Right there. That's
okay.
And if you get to the point where you say you want me to move,
all right.
I'll my guys.
Okay.
Where's the bird?
It's right here. Okay.
Yeah, 40.
What are you doing now?
I talked with the paramedics inside the ambulance, and they asked me where the helicopter was. I told them it was landing, and he asked them to bring the paramedics to them.
So you're bringing the paramedic from the helicopter to the ambulance?
Yes.
All right.
We got approximately 23-year-old female in the back of the ambulance right now. Gunshot underneath the right arm. Went through all the way to the back left. Can you carry this back, please, sir? I got it. You got it? This one's priority.
I got a week right before So, when we don't have that one here.
Guys, just get a couple IDs. They're not sure whether they're IOs or not.
Here, grab the IO stuff.
Can you open your eyes for me? That's it. Yep, there. Yeah, I'll work on the IO and then come around. That's it. If I can just have you guys just step over there for us, okay? Can I have you guys get over there for us? We're going to have to gather everybody up, get everybody's names, everybody who's on scene, okay?
What are you doing now?
Just trying to think what's next. I think I'm putting one of the pilot's headgear inside the ambulance on the other side of the door.
Why are you telling those people to move?
Just to start to gather people up because they're just standing around the church where the said incident happened.
Why didn't you do that when you initially got there?
Just went in and made sure that medical that people were receiving medical treatment, and then slowly go with the flow, see what it could do next.
Are you trained to take action to save lives before moving witnesses around?
Yes, ma'am.
How's it going, sir? I believe you guys will be taking this one.
In the bird then? Did she go in the bird?
No, not yet. They did an IVs, get an IO, and then they're going to take in the bird.
They're coming out like it's out.
They're moving it from this one?
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple of them still.
Is that your stuff?
And whose jacket is that? Joel's. Joel's? Okay.
It's got his phone. It's careful. It is bloody.
Okay.
It's got his phone. It's got his other stuff in it.
Okay, well, we're going to just keep it here. So, he was
his phone?
Officer LeFleur, this woman who's speaking right now, she's not a police officer, right?
No,
Was she employed with the fire department?
no, she was their set medic, I'm guessing.
When you say set medic, do you mean she's the medic on the movie set?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, he was wearing it. Well, where's his phone at?
I don't know.
Do you have any idea why movie sets would have medical personnel on scene?
It's probably for safety reasons. Someone closer than the paramedics or fire department.
For safety reasons?
Yeah.
Phone.
Anybody have Joel's phone?
All right, gentlemen. Yeah, how can we help you? I just need your IDs, and then have you guys step outside and wait for the investigators to get here. Okay? Okay, cool.
Any idea who these guys are?
Just more people involved with the movie set.
Movie set employees?
Yeah.
Is that your impression?
Yes, ma'am.
And who's the props guy? Who's in charge of props?
She has green and purple hair. You can't miss her.
Okay.
I was here when it happened.
You were here when it happened? Who else was here when it happened?
The camera operator.
How many people you think were in here when it happened?
3, maybe 4.
4? Okay. So 2 more other than you two?
Reed, as soon as I see him, he was the camera operator. Reed, yes, sir.
Okay, who else?
Reed Russell was here. Alec Baldwin was the actor on set that pulled the trigger.
Alec Baldwin?
Yes, sir.
Where's he at?
This was the culmination of all that testimony.
I think the objective is he's a prop to enable them to show the video. They need to have the witness on the stand.
Yeah.
He's just wanting us to cry. That's it. That's the only reason this is being.
How's it going, sir? So my
Well, they're
understanding,
showing us
What
what
you were in the room when the lady
before they argue about why.
Right. It's a foundation.
Alrighty. Well, I know your name, so it's JC.
Pursuant to the stipulation, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead.
We're not going to hear from Alec himself? Why? Why would they stipulate that?
Okay.
Maybe
Probably
they're
to get the
stipulating
video
to
in.
later, not now.
That doesn't sound like stipulation.
Let me get with my lieutenant and see where we want you to hang out. Okay?
Whatever you want to do.
Yes, sir. All right. Give me just a second.
Or maybe it's personal information about contact information he was giving him. I don't know.
LT. So I got.
This is just so prejudicial.
I was not given the appropriate reaction.
Oh, they did want it in.
You want me to jump ahead 5 seconds now? What?
Who can explain what were they're trying to skip a portion of the video?
Yeah.
They had stipulated to exclude a bit.
Yeah, essentially like redactions, it seems like.
Yeah, if redacting his contact information, that makes sense. But anything else he's saying there, I don't know why. I don't know how they both agree to it. Either he's saying something good for Alec or bad for Alec, but it's unlikely it's neutral. Why would you keep?
You want to pull the trigger? You want me to have him sit tight or?
Yeah, you're gonna have to sit tight.
Sit tight in the unit.
I have the armor in here. This is all their stuff. I have the gun used is in there.
And I got the 2 people that were in the room.
Okay.
You want me to have Alec Baldwin take a seat in the back of my unit or?
No, we know where he's at. We know who he is.
Yeah.
We just need to say, is he in a trailer?
No, he's right there in the gray and black.
Okay. All right. So try to keep him away from everybody.
Okay.
Have him talk to anybody.
Okay. I can just have him sit. I can sit with him in my unit.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Officer LeFleur, at this point in time, what's your intention?
I was going to go back to where Mr. Baldwin was and then escort him to my unit. When I got there, I realized my unit is over here being used as a post for the crime scene.
So what did you do when you realized that?
Just had him sit where he was and had everybody just hang out there. Started writing down people's names.
Okay.
Ready to shoot. It was prepped. Earplugs, everything. All right.
What are these people doing?
Seems like they're talking about what happened.
Now, as a law enforcement officer, is that something that concerns you?
Yes.
And why? Why does that concern you?
They could be, one person could be telling them what they saw and mess up what they have to say, what they saw. So it could essentially coerce testimony, I guess. People would say the same thing because the other person said it, rather than saying their own opinion or own view of what they saw.
Mr. Baldwin, who's the director on scene?
The guy that was shot at his shoulder.
The guy that was shot? Okay.
Where is he now? I think he's in the ambulance.
Do you guys have a production car? Or?
There's an AD. Name is Dave. I'm waiting for you right now. I'm happy to stay right here and do everything that he's.
Well, my lieutenant just wants you to stay away from everybody and not to talk to nobody. So I was.
Wait right here.
We can wait right here and have everybody step back, or we can wait in the back on patrolling, but I prefer to not put you there, okay?
Alex, you want water or something now? Want to find props to get a cigarette?
So, why did you let Mr. Baldwin sit there instead of putting him in some vehicle and separating him from the other witnesses?
Like I said, my unit was clear across being used as a post, and just because I didn't know what we had right there, came to maintain cooperation with people involved.
Well, it sounds like you gave him an option. You let him choose. Is that right?
Yeah, he wanted to stay right there, and I figured if I could keep him there, I didn't see a big problem with it until later on when people were talking and whatnot.
And did you give Mr. Baldwin instructions about whether or not he could speak to people?
I did tell him to stop talking.
And did you give instructions to the other witnesses that were around?
I didn't tell them, but I told them that he had to sit there and not talk to nobody.
Okay.
I got it. They're going. What do you got? You got medium? Marble medium? We'll take it.
Sure you don't want a cigar?
Hands are shaking. Hey,
Yes, sir.
Right, I'm right there. The silver car is Alec's vehicle. If you want to put him in there.
Mr. Baldwin, is that your car?
Yeah.
We can wait in there.
You want me to stay here?
We can wait in your car if you want to.
I can't smoke in the car.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, we can wait. Hang out right here then.
Still gone? They both gone?
Well, they're still working on the female. If you haven't seen the helicopter take off, then they're not gone yet.
If you know Officer LeFleur, why hadn't the helicopter taken off yet?
I don't know exactly why, but my guess is they have to stabilize the patient before they can put him in the air.
In the air, okay.
I just pulled him in, and I need a smoke break, baby.
Why are you just standing there?
Just standing with Mr. Baldwin, allowing him to smoke a cigarette, making
And
sure.
why is it important for you to be standing there?
Essentially, he's detained, not free to leave. So I'm there with him.
So 3710 interrupt with that. I would say myself there, 65, 25.
Right there, he took his radio off. That's our first AV.
Now right there?
Talking to. In front of that sheriff's car with the gray hair kind of in the
Okay.
shirt.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, is there an officer over here by now?
Can someone refresh my memory as to when they knew Helena Hutchins had died?
I think she's still alive at this point.
I think she's alive when she gets to the hospital, isn't she? But they
have these two gentlemen standing over there that we can see. What is there something important about them?
The guy in the gray I had him stand over there because he was inside the room when I had first got at the church, and the other guy in the brown apparently was in the church too. So I just wanted everybody who was in the church in one area so we could easily be found.
So you wanted everyone that was in the church in one area.
Yes, ma'am.
And are we looking at that area?
To the left of Baldwin is where majority of everybody was. Yes.
Okay. And those were the witnesses that were in the church.
From what I was told, yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. Baldwin, how many people were in the room when it happened?
It's a crew.
It's a crew?
He's got some people that a lot of crews outside that building. He'll tell you.
Okay.
He's the one that knows what was going on. He's asking how many people were in the room at the time.
How's it going, sir? Deputy LeFleur. How many people were in the room at the time? Six? 7.
Officer LeFleur, who's this gentleman who's speaking now in the blue jean shirt?
From what I was told, he was on one of the other directors.
6 or 7? I need a definite answer.
I don't know.
Okay. So I got one here, the 2 that were injured. That makes 3, and then these 2 gentlemen, 4, 5. So who would be the other 2?
Yeah, he's got Ross.
More than 6?
Supervisor, I keep track of the narrative and how many square. I can tell you who's in the room.
Okay. Were you in the room?
I was at the door.
You were at the door? Can I get your ID?
Do you know whether or not the person in the jean shirt was inside the church and witnessed the incident?
I do not know.
Okay, why don't you come on over to the back of T2 to T4. I have 380s for concussion.
Just really just down everybody. Oh, he was inside.
Does it appear to you that Mr. Baldwin is speaking to the other witnesses?
I think he was talking about who would know who's in the room.
Okay.
I can't really hear it. And then apparently the guy's son was working there as well.
Okay. Is this an ideal way to separate someone from witnesses?
After looking at it, probably not, but that's what happened.
Okay. Understood.
You arrived at the door? Do you have an ID on you, sir? As of right now, her status is questionable. That's why we called the air light. But where were you at, sir?
I was right behind him.
Right behind him? Okay.
Yeah, I was right behind him right when it happened.
All right. So just have you guys hang out for me right here. We'll get someone to get your statement in just a second, okay?
And then they cleared the gun outside after, on his request, and I witnessed them clear it and saw the bullets.
Okay. So
the one was, the one that was missing, the one that fired, we don't know, but all the other ones were proper. They had loads.
Officer LeFleur, does it seem to you right now that they're talking about the incident?
Seems like they're talking about the gun that was used in the incident.
All right.
They were loaded blanks.
They had loads. They didn't know. They put this through their shake test before they put the gun load.
Officer, do you know what this conversation is about that we're watching right here?
Something about a shake test. I don't know. Maybe the rounds, dummy rounds, maybe.
Okay.
I'm not too entirely sure.
Do you agree with me that, well, was Mr. Baldwin supposed to be talking about the incident?
No, ma'am.
Does he appear to be doing it anyway?
Yes, ma'am.
We're rehearsing, you give me the empty gun. And we don't use any of the loads. That's not until we're ready to shoot. So we can hear plugs in. You all right? No, I'm worried about her. Yeah, well, me as well, but it's just a situation. She's stable now. You get her in the air. Hit the shoulder. Hit her with both of them kicking in the shoulder. Hers came out the other shoulder, which is why it's not good. His, the shoulder blade stopped it. So shattered. There's basically a rotting to blank, but because I think it was based on the sound of how much ringing I had, I think it was a half.
Officer, are they still talking about the incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason that you didn't stop them since you told them not to?
I think as time goes on, I tell them to stop.
Okay. The barrel. Who knows what else is in the room? My other hand. You were in the room? Okay.
Jeez.
Just get your ID, sir. That's what I said. I think there was more than 6 or 7 guys. I think it was about 8.
You see this gentleman over here on the left?
Yes, ma'am.
Any reason to believe he was inside the room at the time?
I'm not sure at this point.
Okay.
Were you in the room too, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
She was breathing. She had a clear lungs. And that needs to be repeated. But you think so, Scott? They're right. It's not Scott.
Where did the kid go to medical bills?
He took it to the right shoulder. His right shoulder blade stopped it, but they're hearing stuff in his right.
And where did she went out to that?
Did they take him as he got? As soon as they were allowed to. So they'll stabilize both, and then once the sheriff says you're good to go, they'll let them go.
So she basically they're trying to stabilize her vital signs enough for the flight.
Sure.
And administer any kind of narcotics or anything they need, blood thinners and that may be. Then they'll load her up in the helicopter and they'll fly her there. I believe the other ambulance is on the other side, and he seems to be doing better than she was, so
Absolutely.
they might drive him in an ambulance.
I heard him wave off the other bird, so.
Where did they give her? She went out and she got into the
Both of them took it in the shoulder.
When I was up in Joel, I couldn't see nothing on it before they put the ammo.
He just went over.
Yeah,
I ran out.
I came back in the fuse and I was hoping him. I didn't see nothing. I was asking if he was all right. He kicked in.
You and him at the trauma hospital.
Still at St. Vincent's. They're both trauma ones.
Thanks for the information. I was curious.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna step away and call my wife.
Yeah, no problem.
I got more out.
Get him out of my life. There's nobody in this life. You walk around. I want to feel this. You gotta put it down with you. I want to see this.
Officer LeFleur, have more first responders now arrived?
Off to your right, you can see. There it is. Off to your right, you can see more patrol units showing up. This deputy showed up, but this corporal had been there for a minute.
And approximately how long have you now been on scene?
According to my body cam, a little over 25 minutes.
Hey, Corporal. I got 7 people there in the room when it happened, all their IDs, so.
Okay. Just get it all brought down. I'm not sure what the CID came out first.
It's okay.
At that point in time, what was your understanding of how many people were in the room and witnessed it?
I believe I said 7.
Okay. Do you know whether or not that turned out to be true?
I think there was actually more. I wrote all the people who said that they were in the room in my report.
Hey, sir. Okay. And I'm just hanging out with him because, yeah, he's the one who pulled the trigger. So.
Okay. Yeah, he tried it. Sorry, I was trying to set things up a while ago and.
Love how the guys that people are wearing face masks out in the middle of the New Mexico desert.
Well, COVID really loves deserts and the outdoors, don't you know?
No, and also like they're administering first aid to Helena Hutchins. They're all of them are wearing their face masks, even though it complicates communication. Just unbelievable.
All right. Do you have a notepad?
For safety.
Officer LeFleur, at this point in time, I know he's no longer in the frame, but the gentleman in the blue denim shirt, do you know whether or not he was in the room at the time?
I don't recall if he was in the room or not.
Okay.
I know there was some director or whatnot there.
Yeah, I don't have mine either. Yeah, so I start. Yeah, I know. It came off when I was given, trying to pack wounds. Yeah. Okay.
Officer LeFleur, does it look like Mr. Baldwin is speaking to a potential witness?
He just looks like he's talking to the guy who says his name is one of the directors. Yes.
Okay. Is that what you had in mind when you asked Mr. Baldwin not to speak to anyone?
No,
Do you know what they're talking about?
I couldn't hear what they were talking about. I did hear him ask him what cigarettes he was smoking and if he could have one. So.
definitely has a bunch of these cards in there.
Oh, geez. All right.
Or do you want to just try some pages on?
No, because I'm going to be writing quite a bit. Everybody was in the room.
Okay.
I mean, I have my phone on me. Yeah. It's all right. I'll just, yeah, all right now.
Do you see the gentleman in the denim shirt gesturing? You want me to back it up?
Yeah, which one? Are we talking about this gentleman?
Yeah. Do you know what he's gesturing?
No, it looks like he picks up his hand. Now that you play it back, it looks like he's shaking his hand.
And had you seen him do that previously?
No, not until just now.
I thought you testified earlier about a shake test.
The gentleman was talking about a shake test,
Okay.
but I had not seen the director do it until reviewing the footage now.
Okay.
My eyes aren't always exactly where the body cam's pointed, so.
Absolutely.
Why is
When
she
you tell
impeaching her own
people
witness?
Not to talk about the incident, do you
'Cause
have
it's
an
more-
expectation that they'll follow your instructions?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it look like they're following your instructions?
No, ma'am.
Officer, is there a reason why you didn't enforce some basic freaking boundaries?
Officer LeFleur, I'm going to stop the video there.
It's weird for the state to be attacking their own guy this way.
On scene that day.
I helped essentially just wait with other witnesses, I guess, or people that wanted to give a statement or they needed a statement from at a different location. It was their base camp is what they called it.
So you needed to take statements from people that were at another location? Is that what you said?
No, we took people from essentially where we had them, and they took them down to their base camp. And that's where they started interviews.
And the people that you take to base camp, are those the same people that we see here in the video?
I believe so. Those people, and I don't know how many people they ended up interviewing.
Did at any point in time, did Mr. Baldwin tell you that he didn't pull the trigger of the gun?
I believe he told me he was holding the gun. I believe in the beginning when I was leaving the church, one of the guys said that Baldwin had pulled the trigger. So just off of what was told.
And I know that this sounds ridiculous, but we have to follow some jurisdictional rules. Do you see Mr. Baldwin in this frame here?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you point him out, please? And do you see that same gentleman in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Or would you point him out,
That's not ridiculous. That's pretty normal.
With the glasses.
please? Okay.
But does the jury know that's
Anything
normal?
else that you did?
Yeah, but why should preface
of
it that way?
import that you can think of?
She's
that you-
weird. You know this.
I think that's about it.
How long were you on scene, if you recall?
From when I got there was, I don't know, about 10 hours maybe or so. I was there until dark.
You were there for 10 hours.
Yeah, until they were done interviewing people.
Is that typical?
Is that typical?
She doesn't,
of a murder
she doesn't
scene?
need to make faces of
It is.
disgust when she's
That's what they
lambasting
do
his
then.
bad work.
Okay.
You know, I understand getting in front of it, but you don't have to like make these faces like, why did you do this? Like the tone doesn't need to be there.
Do you think
Your Honor, just for the record, we would ask that the record reflect that Officer LeFleur has identified the defendant.
LeFleur.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
I'll pass the witness. I've never heard that term, but I've never done criminal.
I've heard it before, but it's been a hot minute.
Alec Baldwin looks a lot like the lead singer from Blink 182.
Sorry, Mr. Spider.
I'm gonna have to put a side by side here.
always find them.
I think he looks like a rhino.
So you kind of suck as a cop, don't you?
When you got to the scene, Mr. Baldwin walked up to you and said, I was holding a gun. He blurted it out, right?
Yes.
And in fact, he was very shocked, if you could picture Alec Baldwin in a pale state, very unsure of himself. You could say an actor out of character. Fair?
Sure.
Object to the foremost question. It is Mr. Spyro testifying in the question. Okay. May we approach?
We're one question in and we're already approaching the bench. We're off to a good start. I didn't like the tone of her questions on direct. It seemed her tone seemed unduly accusative.
That's what I said. I said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I agree.
And if she's trying to draw the sting, first of all, I don't think the defense would bring up those points. And even if she was trying to do it, it felt very ham-fisted. So.
This was her and Hannah Gutierrez too. She's just got this attitude that she can't drop to save her life.
Yeah.
Baldwin, he looked very shocked. If you could picture Mr. Baldwin in a pale state, like unsure of himself, you could say an actor out of character. Is that a fair description?
Sure.
And he said to you, I'm here, whatever you want to do, right?
Yes.
He said to you at one point, where should I go? Right?
Yes.
And he also pointed out to you who the director was on scene who was hit in the shoulder, right?
I believe so. Yes. I inquired about him.
And he also asked you how she was doing, right? Meaning Miss Hutchins, right?
Yes.
I don't remember you being asked about that on direct, were you?
And you mean asked by the state?
Yeah.
Objection relevance?
Yep. Overruled.
Oh.
So I want to take a step back. The dispatch that came over to your radio, sir, before you got to the scene was a dispatch for an accidental shooting by a prop gun, correct?
I believe that's what was told to me, yes.
Okay. And you've testified to that previously, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the dispatch report, you know that you received that wording, accidental discharge, several times, right?
I believe so.
Okay. So I want to ask you, how come when you described it today in court, how come you didn't include the word accident when you testified before this jury?
I'm not one to say if it was an accident or not. Just there to
Great answer.
initially respond to it, and then the detectives.
Good question, good
whether
answer.
or not it was an accident.
Well, sure, but every other time you've been asked about this, you've said it was an accident. And now today at the trial of Alec Baldwin, when you're talking to this jury, you left that word out. Isn't that true?
Not intentionally, no.
Did you meet with the prosecutors before you testified here today?
Just briefly in the room outside for them to tell me who was in order of what witness.
You've discussed your testimony previously with Ms. Morrissey, correct? Before today?
Just in a pretrial interview, yes.
We've talked about your lapel that was on. It's true, right, that the lapel is actually mandatory.
Yes.
Right? And so they came to the officers, passed a law, and told you had to wear your lapel, right?
Yes.
And the way it works is it secures all of these statements, and when you're done wearing it for the day, you go back to the station, you log it in, and then it exists, right?
Essentially, yeah, but it's more complex than that. It uploads on itself.
Oh, it self-uploads, so that it maintains itself?
Yes.
Okay. And you then talked a little bit about the securing of the scene, and you talked about crime scene tape going up, right?
Yes.
But as you just told this jury, at the time, you don't know whether this is an accident or not, right?
Yes.
It's not like a crime scene tape is some evidence of a crime.
What?
Whether it was an accident or a crime.
Someone
crime
died.
scene is still essential.
And you've been very candid that you made some mistakes at the scene, right?
Yes.
And that you've learned since then about some of these mistakes, right?
Yes.
You've said hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yes.
And you can Monday morning quarterback decisions, but you made them in the field, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've said that based on your training and experience, you know that if witnesses are left to speak to each other, they can taint each other's memories, right?
Yes.
And sometimes that's incidental and accidental, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it's purposeful, right?
Depends on who's there, yes.
Well, if you were with somebody and somebody was talking to you about the 911 call, right? And they kept saying to you over and over, it wasn't an accident, it wasn't an accident. And then you testify and you leave out the word accident. That could be an example of taint, couldn't it?
Sure.
And also non-witnesses can taint people's memories too. You agree with me?
I guess.
Well, at one point in your testimony previously, you had said that there was a lawyer on the scene that was talking to some of the people that were on the scene.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And if that lawyer told somebody on the scene, I think your understanding is that could have tainted their view of their memory, right?
Essentially, yes.
Mr. Baldwin never asked to speak to that lawyer, did he?
Not to my recollection.
And then you went on and you said, that you had told Mr. Baldwin not to speak to the other witnesses. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And I think you were asked approximately 5 times why Mr. Baldwin was disobeying your orders. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. But in the lapel video that we just saw, you're not going up to Mr. Baldwin or these witnesses, but get out of here. Get out of here. I'm an officer. You got to separate. You don't do that, right?
Nope.
And also in that video, you can see a lot of these people are coming over to Mr. Baldwin, right?
Yes.
One of them comes over and shakes his hand, right?
Yes.
Have you ever seen that in all of your experience? Somebody commit a homicide and everybody and all the witnesses are on the scene, circling around the person, shaking his hand and talking
Objection?
about what happened. Have you ever seen that in your entire career?
No.
Objection.
And then you went on to say, well, you didn't put him in the cruiser. You didn't put him in the cruiser because your cruiser was being used. Was I guess the reason that you gave? Was that? Did I understand that right?
My patrol unit was being actively used as a post on the other side of the field for crime scene.
When you say a post, do you mean like it goes somewhere else and you put the tape around it? Is that?
The side mirror was wrapped around with crime scene tape.
Uh-huh. You mean there were also another dozen officers on the scene that day that had police cars if they wanted to put Mr. Baldwin in at any point, right?
Yep.
Okay. And in fact, Mr. Baldwin later on drives himself to the precinct and goes and speaks to the police, right?
I'm not too sure how he got there, but he did get there.
Well, he wasn't under arrest, right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And so you use this word detained. When Ms. Morrissey asked you, well, were you detaining Mr. Baldwin? Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Isn't it true that even today, years later, no police officer has ever arrested Mr. Baldwin or detained him in a police car? True?
I don't know.
Cold speculation.
Fair enough. You wouldn't know. Fair enough.
Okay, still on trial.
The police department, the Santa Fe Police Department, has never arrested Mr. Baldwin.
Not the
Back
Santa
to
Fe
the
Police
form of
Department.
question, asked and answered.
And one of the things that you do as an officer on the scene is you observe demeanor, right?
Yes.
And you spent 10 hours on the scene, I think I heard you say, right?
Yes.
You got to see the people of Rust that day live, right?
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is that you took it as a way how everybody was acting and that the individual who claimed to have been holding the firearm was still there, that there was no, the way he was, his demeanor was that there wasn't any intention behind the act, as you could say. Isn't that true?
What act?
I wouldn't say there was no intention. I don't know the individual's intentions, but
He's not
his
charged
demeanor
with an
was
intentional shooting.
sad.
That's define the
upset.
act.
Okay, well, it's not just his demeanor being sad and upset, right? Okay, I'm gonna move that to the side. And I understand you're not a mind reader, right?
No, he
Yes.
is.
All
Part-time
you
on the
can do
weekend.
is look at the people and look at how they're interacting and make your own judgments, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you do that as a police officer to try to figure out how to interact with a scene. True?
Yes.
Okay, and isn't it true that that the way you took it, how everybody was acting, and that the individual who claimed to have been holding the firearm was still there, that there was the way he was, his demeanor was that there wasn't any intention behind the act, as you could say. Isn't that true?
Again, the wording you're using, I wouldn't say I
Okay.
had any clue of whose intention was what, but he was sad and upset.
Okay, well, let's play. I'm going to play his statement to that effect. Can you cue that up, please? If that's okay for the court. He's saying he didn't say that he did. I'm going to impeach him. Well, you want me to clarify that?
I'm going to impeach him.
Are you claiming that you didn't say that?
Rephrase what you said?
Sure. Dispatch said it was an accidental shooting by a prop gun. So I didn't know if there was any. I took it as the way how everybody was acting, and that the individual who claimed to have been holding the firearm was still there, that there was the way he was, his demeanor was that there wasn't any intention behind the act, as you could say,
Again, I wouldn't say I knew what his
He's not
intention
charged
was.
with intent.
I understand
And that
what
was
I'm asking
also
you now,
consistent with what he
okay,
just
is
said.
did you, in fact, say those words that I just asked you?
Did you say
At what
those?
time? The Gutierrez or PTI?
Yes.
May have.
Okay. You don't deny saying that.
No.
I think they're arguing that this is improper impeachment. I mean, they're treating it like a prior inconsistent statement, but he hasn't said anything inconsistent with all of this.
And he's not charged with having the intent to kill Helena. So
Yeah.
I mean, what's he trying to prove? That he said it? What does it change in terms of whether or not he did what we know that he did?
Yeah.
The act.
Well, I do think we are possibly looking at this like lawyers. We're focusing on this word intent. We understand intent has legal significance in homicide, and it changes, the type of homicide that you're dealing with and so forth. My sense is that he's trying to do this more as a theatrical point for the jury of, he didn't mean to do it.
So the jury's going to say, oh, well, the first responder or the cop who showed up the first day said he didn't have the intent, and therefore we should acquit him.
Yeah, maybe the gun must have just went off
you
because
say
he
that
didn't intend to
statement,
fire it.
If you're reading the statement and it says my name next to it, then I more likely said it. Just don't recall when.
It's certainly destabilizing the witness.
the framing is designed to make it sound as if it's an accident and not reckless negligence. That's the framing, and that's what's questionable. Which is an improper conclusion based on a
that
statement.
happened that day. That
Well, it's
I
an
don't think we
improper
talked
opinion
about
on the ultimate issue.
Yeah. But it's also an improper conclusion to draw from the statement. It's both. He can't make that conclusion, and if he had made that conclusion,
You
it's
spoke
not
to a
reflected in
witness
the
who
statement.
told you that a woman named Sarah was crying and shaking and going through the bullets and saying, "I don't know how it got in there."
Objection, hearsay.
I'm asking the witness if he had that information.
He's
That's
making this.
I'm asking if you heard someone
still
say it.
hearsay.
Let me put this hearsay in front of the
know whether
jury.
anybody at the scene was before you got there, shaking and going through the bullets and saying, "I don't know how it got in there"?
I don't know.
How would he
Could you
possibly know
refresh
that?
the witness with his lapel?
Before you got there, were
And I would
people
ask
saying
if you
things?
Put it up on just his screen. Okay.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Because that's not proper refreshment. We don't refresh in front of the jurors.
Now, this is a
That's my
speaking objection.
What do you mean?
This is
Well,
exactly
we're
what the defense
refreshing.
didn't want and exactly what we knew was going to happen.
And we're gonna be back at 1 o'clock, okay? Please don't talk among yourselves.
Let's see if she starts wabiering the witnesses while they're on the stand.
That'd be good.
With or without the judge's permission.
So
Just
we're going to
about
take
left you at
lunch
home.
now while you guys figure out how to refresh witnesses.
Oh,
Yeah, how can you refresh information that he could not have had any other way than hearsay?
Yeah, it's the first place. Yeah, exactly.
Recollection is what I remember.
People shaking the
That's
bullets
what I
before you
remember
got
He
there.
hearing.
didn't say I
I
don't
don't know.
remember. He said I don't know.
Yeah.
If he doesn't know you, there's nothing to refresh.
Yeah.
That too.
So New Mexico is 2 hours behind East Coast time.
Yes.
Okay. So they got 50 minutes or change. Oh, they say 2 o'clock. They said 1 o'clock, so 50 minutes for lunch. And
she just can't help herself, man.
that was very uneventful. Very boring. Not learning anything new.
I want to refresh his recollection about things he's never seen before in his life.
No, but like
He
that.
doesn't know.
The first responder police officer who gets there, his statements are now the ultimate adjudication of criminal guilt for manslaughter. Good luck.
Yeah,
with
that too.
I
It's
don't
like
know.
even if
Why
I had
did she
said
not
accident,
object to
that's
this?
just positive now.
Why does she not object to the opinion on guilt? That is like black letter
Yeah.
law. You do not get to do that.
No,
not usually.
Well, because it's Morsi.
I'm not really.
I'm
I'm not really a
big
fan of
I'm
either of
sorry.
these attorneys, to be honest. His problem, at least to my mind, is he just came in way too hot right from the start. There's really no need for that, and it doesn't give you a lot of places to go in case you need to get hot later too. It's better to start softer and with a more pleasant approach. First of all, you might actually get some compliance and lure them into some security, and if not, it gives you some place to go in case you need to get indignant later. But like right off the bat with the fireman, I'm like, you're at least at a 7. I need you to come down to a 4.
Well, and the thing I noticed right off the bat with this police officer is for a witness on cross, he's incredibly agreeable. So I kind of agree with what you're saying here,
really
Kurt.
work.
He's not fighting at all. So why would you not just go ahead and lead him to where you want him to be? You don't have to like push him over the cliff to get him there.
Yeah.
I just feel so bad for this witness. He's just going to go home feeling like crap. This is the same thing that happened in Hannah Gutierrez's trial, where both attorneys were like, so you really don't know what you're doing. So you really screwed up, didn't you? And he's like, dude, I was just improvising with what I had. I don't freaking know this. I'm not in charge of everything on scene. I just showed up. I'm showing you what happened. The end. But they're treating him as though he's like this pivotal fact witness, when in reality, the only reason he's on the stand and the only reason they're showing the video is to lay a foundation for the other witnesses to come and to sort of frame the issues. And so I don't get, though, why the defense is deciding to die on this hill.
Well, and I think that the objective, that when I referred to him as being a prop, meaning as far as the state is concerned, they want the jury to watch that video much more than hear his words.
Yeah.
And that's why, that he's the prop device. You can't just throw a video up there. You need to have someone substantiating it. So he's the person substantiating the legitimacy of this video in order to have it admitted as evidence. But the words coming out of his mouth, I think, are really relatively unimportant to the state. And that's why I refer to him as the prop device, because he's not what we care about. We care about this evidence getting in front of the jury. So, yeah, his clumsiness is probably annoying for them.
You know, like the whole investigation is tainted because they weren't immediately isolated on the set.
That doesn't seem right.
no,
I mean, he's literally the only guy there right at the start. He's the only guy there. This is a movie set. There's however many people that are in the room plus the other people. So there's 50 people there.
Well,
he's one guy. He has to
guys,
secure the
preview here,
scene. Secure the scene, get people out of the places where they're not supposed to be, put up the crime scene tape, try to isolate witnesses. It's like, I can only be in so many places at once, man.
They're doing this because this is going to be the excuse for the very bad things Alec Baldwin says that they don't want to have to account for. They're going to blame it on, oh, maybe David Hall suggested it to him. Maybe somebody else suggested it to him. His memory was not intact because he was allowed to have this contact with all of these other witnesses at the scene. That's where I see this going.
Who did he have contact with first? His attorney. He called his freaking attorney and talked to his attorney this whole time. So it's not like he can lean back on that. That's going to be the question. Who was he talking to? Do you know?
Did they? I mean, I don't know if this is. I've never practiced criminal law, but did they read him his Miranda rights, or are they going to try to argue that statements he made before the Miranda rights were read are therefore inadmissible?
He's not required to have Miranda rights read if this is not a custodial interrogation. So he's detained. He is not under arrest. He is not subject to all of the restraints ordinarily associated with an arrest, like being in handcuffs, being at the police station, and so forth. So it's from my perspective, it's not going to meet the standard for when Miranda is required.
I completely agree with you, Andrea. As a matter of fact, I think that the person who should have been Mirandized was Hannah Gutierrez. The minute they started putting her in the back of police cars, escorting her back and forth to the bathroom, etc. I mean, it's just, she should have been read her Miranda rights, but she wasn't. And all of the testimony that she gave from the time she was put aside, right after the shooting, she was set aside, she was put in the back of the police car, she started talking, and all of that video came in. So this is more than fair game. Oh, we had a change in color.
Just change the background, make it a little bit more pleasant. I thought it would be nice. Yeah. So, But overall, I think I'm not really a big fan of either attorney, to be honest. I find her tone overly aggressive for what she's trying to do, and I find him to be overly indignant. And they're not. Neither one I'm particularly huge fans of.
Uncivil. I brought up the comment that everyone says like the lawyers pretending to be Alec. I mean, we always say this, like the lawyers represent their clients and the clients represent their lawyers in personality sometimes as well. And Baldwin undoubtedly got a lawyer who's going to channel the Baldwin arrogance and the Baldwin rage. We don't know. So we don't know who the list of witnesses are as of now, right? Like who comes.
No, we have the list of like all the witnesses that they selected. So we got the list of 44 witnesses, but they're not going to call all those people. So who knows?
Has anyone placed an over/under bet as to whether or not Baldwin testifies?
I don't think he can. There's so much impeachment material out there. It'd be insane.
The question is simply whether he can be managed by his lawyers. That's the question for me. The $1 million question, will he do what they tell him? I'm not 100% convinced he can be. And if he can't, I think it's very likely he will see himself as being so talented and so just superbly in the right that he would be able to sell his case to the jury.
I think that they can manage him, actually. I think because he's an actor, I think if they play the role of director well enough and they say, hey, this is the image we want, this is your character, this is how you're going to respond, I think he could be okay. I think the problem is the minute he takes the stand, and his attorneys are very well aware of this, all of his prior interviews, all the shit he said that would otherwise be inadmissible now comes in, and I don't think they would ever do that.
Are they already inadmissible, or are they party admissions?
That's why how could his voluntary out of court statements not be admissible?
Yeah, because they're statements against interest. They're statements of the party opponent. I think they come in regardless of whether he testifies. They don't have to wait to impeach him. They'll be able to bring in his interview whether he testifies or not.
That's what I was thinking, because in Rittenhouse they couldn't bring up him pleading the fifth and not giving interviews, but my goodness, Alec ran his mouth, and he can't now say you can't admit any of that. I wouldn't think, but I don't rely on my knowledge.
I remember one of the motions in limine, and I'm going to look through all my notes. There was a motion in limine specifically to that issue, so I'll try and find it, but I remember that there was a problem where there was some exclusion.
That had to do with the prosecutor is arguing that the defense does not get to introduce his own out-of-court statements because he is not his own party opponent.
Right,
self-serving hearsay, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's what that argument was. But it doesn't mean that the state isn't going to be able to bring it in. I fully expect they would bring in everything. And so then if that's already all on the table, and you're not going to save anything by keeping him off the stand, is he going to push to get on the stand and explain it all?
Oh, he totally will. I agree with you on that point. Yeah, I know.
If anyone is interested in giving me 3-1 odds, I'll bet that Baldwin takes the stand. I think even money I would bet
3-1. I don't know.
3-1, man.
The other side of that bet.
I'll bet
good.
you 10, and if he takes the stand, you pay me 30.
Oh,
and if he doesn't, I give you 10.
I thought you went the other way.
No. I still think it's less likely, but I think he's going to have to take the stand because they are going to put out all of those interviews about him not pulling the trigger, and he'll try to convince a jury in real time. It'll be acting.
I'll take you on that bet, Viva.
Okay, done. Gentlemen and gentlemen.
No way. No freaking way. I my hope is.
You see that? We shook right there. It's a digital shake.
It happened. So, I mean, that's I would hope that his attorneys show him footage of Amber Heard on the stand and say, look, I know you're a better actor than she is, but even good actors like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard can have their words used against them. Don't try it. Don't do it. That would be my hope. If I were the attorney, that's what I would do. I would literally just take a whole compilation, cut scenes of Amber Heard and put it right in front of him and say, I want you to watch this for 10 minutes before we make a decision. And that's it. And then
he's just going to think he's a better actor than her. He's going to be able to rationalize this all in his mind. Well, she's, she's obviously just whatever she is. I am the great thespian Alec Baldwin.
I'm Johnny Depp's levels, and Johnny Depp did a great job. So why wouldn't I? Yeah.
But if I'm Baldwin, I don't think I have a choice. On the one hand, I don't think I have a choice, and I think I've got nothing to lose because nothing can be more prejudicial than what they're going to get in already in terms of what he said about not pulling the trigger, not pointing a gun at somebody. That's all out there. So I don't think he's got a choice in terms of whether or not he testifies.
I think he has a
Yeah.
choice, and I think he's in a much better position to let his attorney speak for him. And I think if the attorneys can make that clear to him and perform competently throughout this trial, then he'll trust their opinion. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
I guess we'll see. Should be exciting.
Bets are in. I'm still refreshing the predicted on Biden being the nominee versus Kamala Harris.
Oh yeah, what's the predicted showing right now?
47 cents that Biden will be the nominee, which is less than 50-50. So I think right now that's going to go back up and then it's going to go back down. Kamala Harris is at 39 cents that she will be the nominee, and I think that's too high. Barnes yesterday predicting that there's going to be more hit pieces on Joe Biden. The left is going to melt down as they're doing.
Yep.
George Clooney's come out. I'm trying to read this here. George Clooney's come out. Rob Reiner has come out now and said that Biden has to withdraw. It's fantastic.
If Rob Reiner said it.
Well, that's why you know it's wrong. So
yeah, I don't think it's fantastic though. Viva, from my perspective as a longtime Republican, I see this as very calculated and very well timed. And I think they still have plenty of time to put in a new candidate. They did this intentionally to try and make sure that RFK couldn't have a chance of ending up on the ballot, and neither could, potential political enemies within the party itself. The party is very divided. And I think what's going to end up happening is they timed this. They knew that the guy's going to die in the next 3 years. Come on. Let's be real. Anybody who's been watching anything about Biden knew that his longevity wasn't going to last forever. The Biden ship has sailed. They knew that for a while. They planned this out to have a dark horse. Now, I think the real fight is going to be who's the dark horse. Is it going to be Kamala Harris? Are they going to try and shoehorn in some other candidate?
The problem with that thinking, on the one hand, is that they've gotten already a little bit too far in the process to easily and logistically swap out Biden. And there's nobody that can be swapped in for Biden who's going to be less unpopular than Biden himself. And so the question is almost, do they let Biden lose with a heartbeat or just hope that people vote for the comatose Biden? He just got to make it to, I don't even know if he's got to make it to, he's got to make it to November. Just a heartbeat. And then swap in Kamala afterwards, but because nobody's going to vote for Kamala now. That's
people
the thinking.
Will vote for Gavin Newsom. I think if there is a potential switch, it's going to be Gavin Newsom. That's why he was there at the debate stage near the stage at that time. That's why he's been inviting Xi Jinping over, and he's been cleaning up California and making policy changes that doesn't cater to the furthest left of his party, but it does cater to the standard classical liberal side of his party. He is trying to up his image. And I think really the call is going to be up to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. If they get on board with Newsom, all they need is to hand Biden a script where he stands out there on stage with a script and says, I'm now introducing the man that I really support and love, Governor Gavin Newsom, and then that's all that has to happen. Gavin Newsom walks out, and boom, bada bing, he's the nominee.
I actually sort of subscribe to that as well, because I think that they've been building out Biden to even look like Newsom to look like Joe Biden. But from what people who I consider to be smarter than myself have said, is that Newsom would not win the swing states. He won't win the Midwest, and he won't even win his own state. He's that unpopular. Whether or not they just need a functional body is the issue, but. We'll see.
I hope not. I think Newsom is scary. I think that there's enough extreme leftists that would absolutely get behind him. I think there's enough money behind Gavin Newsom to really help him in the polls. I don't By the way, you guys, these are arguments, okay? It doesn't mean that I subscribe to this or that I think he'll win over Trump. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, based on my observations of the DNC, I don't think that they're going to risk it. I mean, maybe Kamala, maybe. I don't know. I think it's going to be Kamala at the end of the day. I think
it's probably the most likely scenario.
Kamala's going to come in.
Gavin Newsom is now trading at 8 cents. He was once at let me see if I can track the charts of 30-day and Newsom really went up for a while. Harris volume. It is not healthy for people with Newsom was up to 23 cents at one point. maybe even more.
Can the party coalesce around Kamala? That's my thinking.
I think she's more detestable than Joe
Right,
Biden.
than Biden. And so I'm like, that's my struggle here is I want to say, okay, yeah, Kamala's a surefire, step in, but nobody seems to like her that
No,
much.
and I've got an active bet against Kamala, regardless of who is replaced. If Joe Biden gets bumped out, it's wild. But oh well, this trial, there's going to be some juicy moments of this trial. But if what's his face doesn't if Baldwin doesn't testify, it's going to be a very, very anticlimactic.
I don't think he will. I'm waiting for my $10. Do you do or wait, $30, right?
No. I would give you 10, you give me 30. And I don't do Venmo, so I'll have to do PayPal.
Oh, okay.
And we'll have to declare that because it's taxable revenue.
Yeah, it's an easy $10. I'll take it.
So now if we're looking at this, Andrea, Joe, and Nate, if I go and refresh, are they talking? Are they doing? First of all, can I do a simultaneous stream?
If they're doing a side stream, I'm
that's my guilt. That's what I don't want to feel guilty about. I might put this on, not pause, but let this run when it comes back on, and then do my own stream where I talk.
Well, we could take a break because we do have a separate afternoon scheduled for 2:30.
How do you mean? That
So
means that you end it and then restart.
We end the stream and then we set it up. Like you go and do the exact same thing you did before, where you join the stream and then restream to your various platforms.
Okay.
And then it just restreams the stream. I am not going to be doing a lunch breakdown or a lunch stream every day. That's too much for me.
Yeah.
I personally am not. But I will be doing it later tonight. So I am going to be doing a separate stream tonight.
Oh, just out of curiosity, I don't gamble too much because like it's a nominal amount. What I do is refresh too much because it's like if it weren't that, I'd be refreshing the news or refreshing Twitter. It's just like it's a OCD compulsion. I can't gamble too much because I hate losing money and I'm a bad gambler. But my predictions thus far, as relates to this, it's not gambling anymore because it's an understanding of the political landscape. I was right about the debate. Holy crab apples. That's like where I said it was going to be a disaster, whether or not it was a deliberate setup. Because Danny, I sort of felt like the deep state wanted to find a way to get Joe out that would be politically palatable or everyone would see the necessity. But Barnes presents a decent argument that the deep state loves Joe Biden. Why would they need to get him out? He does their bidding for him.
He's a puppet. He's the best puppet you could ever have.
But that's why you'd have to assume they don't want him out. The only issue is whether or not they see him not living until November, or I don't even know. He'd have to live till November. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the deep state really loves Joe Biden as long as they can actually use him. I think though he's expired his use. I think he's to the point where there's not much they can do to help him. By the way, you guys, just because I'm putting forward this idea, listen, Newsom, we all know, has destroyed California. But the question is do California voters care and are they aware? Because most California voters are willing to hold their nose and vote Newsom over Trump. That's the reality. We are not talking about people who care about policy. We're talking about people who care about who's president and how it looks to them, period. We've learned this over the past 5 years, 6 years now. So, that's my personal thought. I don't think that
I actually have an errand that I need to run. So can one of you guys end the stream? Because I'm happy to let you guys.
No, I'm going to kill it now. I got to go take care of some.
All right. So we'll see you all.
We will be back.
We will see you, I guess, in an hour or whenever they come back from court.
Hour.
So
and
we'll see you later this afternoon. Until then, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers, my friends, for now, and goodbye.
Subscribe to everybody.
Subscribe to everybody.
Okay, love you guys. See you in a bit.